The courtroom fell silent as Jason Hale stood alone at the defendant's table, his worn dress shirt slightly too large at the collar. "Your Honor, I'll be representing myself today." A ripple of laughter echoed through the gallery. Rachel's attorney, a woman in a $1,000 suit, smirked and shuffled her mountain of evidence. The judge removed his glasses, studying this foolish man who dared walk into family court without legal representation, without money, without a chance. But when Jason opened his mouth to speak about his daughter Maya, about the 3 years of breakfast rituals and rearranged work shifts, about love that couldn't be measured in bank statements or square footage, the entire courtroom held its breath. What happened next would change everything. Stay with me until the end of this story, and comment below what city you're watching from so I can see how far this father's fight has traveled. The morning Jason Hale received the custody modification papers, he was standing in his narrow kitchen making chocolate chip pancakes, Maya's favorite. The envelope arrived by certified mail, requiring his signature, which meant someone wanted proof he'd been served. His hands shook as he signed the courier's digital pad, the letters of his name looking jagged and uncertain. Maya sat at their small dining table, coloring a picture of what she called our castle, their one-bedroom apartment with its peeling paint and radiator that clanked through winter nights. She was humming a song from school, completely unaware that her mother was trying to take away half of her childhood. Jason waited until he'd plated Maya's pancakes, waited until he'd poured her orange juice into the plastic cup with the faded Disney princesses, waited until she'd taken her first happy bite before he opened the envelope in the bathroom with the door locked and the fan running to cover any sound he might make. Petition for modification of custody agreement. The legal words blurred together, but the meaning was clear. Rachel Monroe, formerly Rachel Hale, was seeking full physical custody of their 8-year-old daughter, primary residence with mother. Father, to have supervised visitation every other weekend, pending evaluation. Supervised visitation, as if he were dangerous. As if the past 3 years of split custody, Monday through Thursday with him, Friday through Sunday with Rachel, hadn't proven he was a capable, loving parent. Jason sat on the edge of the bathtub, the paper trembling in his hands. Through the door, he could hear Maya laughing at something on the tablet he'd bought her for Christmas. A refurbished one, 2 generations old, but she loved it fiercely. The petition listed reasons: unstable living conditions, irregular employment schedule, insufficient space for a growing child, father's inability to provide adequate educational and extracurricular opportunities. Each phrase was a knife, each legal word a judgment on every sacrifice he'd made. When the divorce finalized 3 years ago, Jason had been working as an assistant manager at a sporting goods store. The pay was modest but steady. The apartment was small but clean. Rachel had agreed to split custody because her own lawyer had advised her that the court would likely order it anyway. Jason had been Maya's primary caregiver since birth, while Rachel focused on her pharmaceutical sales career. But then the sporting goods store chain declared bankruptcy. Jason lost his job 3 months after the divorce was final. For 6 weeks, he burned through his meager savings while sending out applications, each rejection another weight on his chest. Maya never missed a meal, never went without, but Jason survived on rice and eggs, losing weight he couldn't afford to lose. He'd finally found work as a warehouse supervisor at a logistics company. The pay was actually better than his previous job, but the schedule was unpredictable. Sometimes day shifts, sometimes nights, sometimes mandatory overtime during holiday rushes. Jason made it work. He traded shifts with coworkers, called in favors, rearranged his entire life around Maya's school schedule and their custody arrangement. For 3 years, he'd never been late for a pickup, never missed a parent-teacher conference, never forgot a permission slip or a school project or a doctor's appointment. But none of that mattered now. Rachel's petition painted him as chaos incarnate. "Daddy?" Maya's voice came through the bathroom door. "Are you pooping?" Despite everything, Jason smiled. "Yeah, sweetheart. I'll be right out." "Okay. Can we go to the park after breakfast?" "Of course we can." He folded the papers and slipped them back into the envelope. Through the small bathroom window, morning sunlight filtered in, and Jason could see the building across the alley. Another cheap apartment complex just like his, filled with other people barely making it, all of them trying their best. The first hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks away. Jason had 21 days to find a lawyer he couldn't afford, to build a defense against accusations that felt designed to be indefensible, to somehow prove that love mattered more than money. He washed his face, dried it on a towel that had been Maya's baby blanket before it became too worn, and opened the door. Maya looked up from her tablet, pancake syrup on her chin, her eyes so full of trust that Jason felt his chest tighten. "Can I have more pancakes?" she asked. "You can have anything you want, baby." Fun. The law offices of Morrison, Chen and Associates occupied 3 floors of a downtown building with a lobby that made Jason feel like a trespasser. Marble floors, leather furniture, a receptionist whose makeup probably cost more than Jason's monthly grocery budget. "I'm here to see someone about a custody case," Jason said, his voice smaller than he intended. The receptionist smiled professionally. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, I was hoping for a consultation." "Of course. Let me see who's available." She typed something on her computer, her nails clicking against the keys with a rhythm that sounded expensive. "It looks like Mr. Chen has an opening in 45 minutes. Our consultation fee is $300 for the first hour." Jason's wallet held $73. His checking account held another $400, most of which was earmarked for rent due in 8 days. Do you know of any lawyers who might work on a payment plan? Or pro bono?" The receptionist's professional smile tightened slightly. "You might try the Legal Aid Society. Their number is—" "I already called them. They said they're not taking new family law cases right now. 6-month waiting list." "I'm sorry." And she was, genuinely. Jason could hear it in her voice. "Family law is very expensive, Mr. Hale. Jason Hale." "Mr. Hale, you might consider representing yourself. It's not ideal, but people do it." "Do they win?" The receptionist hesitated, which was answer enough. Jason left the building and sat in his 12-year-old Honda Civic in the parking garage, his forehead against the steering wheel. The car smelled like old coffee and the strawberry air freshener Maya had insisted they buy. On the passenger seat sat the folder he'd assembled, copies of Maya's report cards, photos of their apartment, his work schedule, a letter from Maya's teacher praising his involvement. It felt pathetically thin compared to whatever Rachel's lawyer would bring. His phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "Can you take Maya this weekend?" Something came up with work. For 3 years, they'd maintained a coldly civil relationship. Exchanges in parking lots, brief texts about schedule changes. Neither of them had dated anyone else. Or at least Jason hadn't, and Rachel had never mentioned anyone. They existed in a strange limbo of not quite divorced people who shared a child and little else. Jason typed back, "Of course, I always have time for Maya." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "We need to talk about the custody petition." "Yeah, we do. Not over text. Can you come by the house tomorrow, after you drop Maya at school?" "I'll be there." The house. It still hurt to call it that. It had been their house once, a modest 3-bedroom ranch in a decent school district, bought when Maya was 2, and their marriage still felt like it might survive. Rachel kept it in the divorce because she could afford the mortgage on her pharmaceutical sales salary. Jason took the retirement fund, which was barely enough for first and last month's rent on his apartment. That night, after putting Maya to bed in the bedroom that was technically his but functionally hers, he slept on the pull-out couch in the living room. Jason sat at their small kitchen table and opened his laptop. He Googled how to represent yourself in family court and began reading. The information was overwhelming. Filing deadlines, rules of evidence, proper courtroom procedure, how to cross-examine witnesses, how to object, how to present documents. The law was a language Jason didn't speak, a game with rules he'd never learned. But he read anyway, deep into the night, taking notes in a spiral notebook while the radiator clanked. And somewhere in the building, a baby cried, and through the thin walls he could hear his neighbor's television playing late-night infomercials. He read about fathers who'd represented themselves and lost, about mothers who'd lost, about the cold mathematics of family law, where judges weighed factors like income and square footage and stability, quantifiable things that could be written on forms and compared on spreadsheets. How do you quantify reading bedtime stories? How do you measure the value of being there for every nightmare, every skinned knee, every proud moment when Maya learned to tie her shoes or finished a hard math problem? At 2 a.m, Jason found a form for self-represented litigants. The posts were heartbreaking, Desperate people fighting for their children, their homes, their dignity. Most of the success stories involved having at least some legal help. The failures outnumbered the victories. One post stuck with him. The judge won't care that you love your kid. Every parent in that courtroom loves their kid. You need to prove you can provide stability. Everything else is just noise. Jason closed his laptop and sat in the dark. Through Maya's bedroom door, left open a crack the way she liked it, he could hear her soft breathing. On the refrigerator hung a crayon drawing labeled "Me and Daddy at the Park." Beside it, a certificate from her school. Maya Hale, perfect attendance. Below that, a photo Jason had taken of her grinning with a gap-toothed smile after losing her first baby tooth. This small apartment, with its secondhand furniture and two small kitchen and bathroom where the grout needed replacing, it was filled with more love than any mansion could hold. But how do you prove that in court? Rachel's house looked the same as it had when Jason lived there, except the lawn was professionally maintained now and there was a new car in the driveway, a sleek SUV with temporary tags. Through the window, Jason could see the living room he'd helped paint, the shelves where he'd arranged family photos that probably didn't include him anymore. Rachel answered the door in yoga pants and a fitted top, her hair in a neat ponytail. She looked good, rested, successful, like someone whose life was going according to plan. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. The house smelled like vanilla candles and expensive coffee. Everything was neat, coordinated, adult. No crayon drawings on the walls, no toy bins in the corners. The transformation from family home to adult space was complete. "You want coffee?" Rachel asked. "Sure." They sat at the kitchen island, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, pendant lights that Jason had installed himself back when "we" and "our" still meant something. Rachel poured coffee from a machine that probably cost more than Jason's monthly food budget. "So," Rachel said. "So," Jason echoed. "I assume you read the petition." "I did." "Supervised visitation, Rachel. Really?" She looked into her coffee cup. "That was Alan's suggestion, my lawyer. He said we needed to establish that I'm an unfit parent, that I'm dangerous. That's not what this is about. Then what is it about?" Jason kept his voice level, aware that Rachel could probably use any conflict against him. "For 3 years we've made this work. Maya is happy. She's thriving. Her teacher says she's one of the best students in her class. She has friends, she's confident, she's living in a one-bedroom apartment where she doesn't even have her own room," Rachel interrupted. "Working around a father whose schedule changes every week. Missing opportunities because you can't afford piano lessons or summer camp or... I take her to the free music program at the community center. We go to the library every week. She's learning guitar and she loves it. Just because something doesn't cost money doesn't mean it has no value." Rachel's jaw tightened. "This isn't about money, isn't it? Every single point in your petition comes down to the fact that I don't make as much as you, that I can't give her the same material things you can." "She deserves stability, Jason." "She has stability. She has a father who shows up, who knows her favorite foods, her friends' names, what she's learning in school, what makes her laugh. When's the last time you went to a parent-teacher conference?" "I work, Jason. I travel for my job. That's how I can afford to give her things." "I know. But what about giving her you?" The words hung between them, sharp and true. Rachel stood, walked to the window overlooking the backyard. The swing set Jason had built was gone, replaced by a garden with neat rows of flowers that looked professionally maintained. "My mother thinks I'm making a mistake," Rachel said quietly. Jason's ex-mother-in-law, Patricia, had always liked him. She'd been devastated when they divorced, had maintained a relationship with both of them, careful not to take sides. "Then why are you doing this?" Jason asked. "Because Alan convinced me that Maya would be better off primarily with me, that she needs a stable home with her own room, access to better opportunities, a parent with a predictable schedule. And when he laid it all out like that, it made sense. It still makes sense." "Does it? Or does it just look good on paper?" Rachel turned. "What do you want me to say, Jason? That I'm doing this to hurt you? I'm not. I'm doing this because I genuinely believe it's best for Maya." "Without even asking her?" "She's 8 years old. She can't make this decision. But we can. We can decide her entire childhood for her in a courtroom? That's how custody works. Jason stood. The coffee sat untouched between them, getting cold. I can't afford a lawyer, he said. I've called everyone. Legal aid has a 6-month wait. Private attorneys want retainers I don't have. So I'm going to represent myself. Rachel's expression shifted to something like pity, which was worse than anger. Jason, don't. You'll lose. Alan is one of the best custody attorneys in the state. He'll tear you apart. Maybe, but at least I'll have tried. At least Maya will know that I fought for her. She'll still see you. Supervised visitation means you think I'm a danger to our daughter. It means some court-appointed stranger has to watch me be a father. Do you have any idea what that would do to her? To us? Rachel's composure cracked slightly. I don't want to do this through the court. If you just agree to a modified schedule. I'll see you at the hearing, Jason said, heading for the door. Jason. He stopped, hand on the doorknob. I really do think this is best for her, Rachel said, her voice small. Jason looked back at the woman he'd once loved, standing in the kitchen of the house they'd bought together, defending a decision that would break their daughter's heart. Then I guess we'll let a judge decide who's right, he said, and left. The night before the first hearing, Jason couldn't sleep. He'd spent weeks preparing, reading everything he could find about family law, watching YouTube videos about courtroom procedure, organizing his evidence into folders with labels he hoped made sense. Maya was at Rachel's for the weekend. The apartment felt too quiet without her chatter, her songs, her constant questions about why the sky is blue and whether dinosaurs could swim and if love was heavier than rocks. Jason's phone buzzed at 11 p.m. A text from his younger sister, Angela. Good luck tomorrow. You've got this. Angela lived 3 states away with her own family, 2 kids, a husband, a life that seemed impossibly put together compared to Jason's. But she'd been his champion through the divorce, through the job loss, through every hard moment. He texted back, Thanks, terrified. You should be. But you're also the best dad I know. Let them see that. How? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, tell the truth. That's all you can do. Jason set his phone down and walked to Maya's bedroom. He sat on her bed, a twin with a comforter covered in stars that she'd picked out at a thrift store, and declared perfect. Her stuffed animals lined the shelf he'd installed. Her books, library books mostly, borrowed and returned and borrowed again, sat in a milk crate he'd painted purple, her favorite color. On her nightstand, a framed photo, Jason and Maya at the beach last summer, both sunburned and grinning, holding a sandcastle that had already begun to crumble. They'd spent the whole day there, from sunrise to sunset, and it had cost them nothing but gas money and $5 for ice cream. It was one of Maya's favorite memories. She talked about it constantly, the feel of sand between her toes, the wave that knocked her over and made her laugh until she cried, the way they'd collected shells in an old coffee tin. How do you present a memory as evidence? Jason pulled out his phone and took a photo of Maya's room, not staged, not cleaned up for the court, just as it was. Her drawings taped to the walls, her shoes kicked off by the door, her toothbrush in the bathroom, sitting next to his in a cup she'd decorated with stickers. Evidence of a life shared. Evidence of a home. He didn't know if any of it would matter. At midnight, Jason finally lay down on the pull-out couch, but sleep wouldn't come. His mind kept rehearsing what he'd say, how he'd respond when Rachel's lawyer attacked him with questions about his income, his schedule, his too small apartment. At 3 a.m., he gave up and made coffee. Sitting at the kitchen table with his notebook, Jason wrote, Why I'm fighting. 1. Because Maya deserves to have her father in her life, not as a weekend visitor, but as a daily presence. 2. Because love and stability aren't measured in square footage. 3. Because showing up matters more than showing off. 4. Because I'm not asking to take Maya away from her mother. I'm asking to keep being her father. 5. Because if I don't fight for this, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. He stared at the list, added one more line, 6. Because she chose me to be her father, and I'll never stop earning that choice. Outside, the city was beginning to wake. Delivery trucks rumbled past. Somewhere nearby, a siren wailed. The radiator clanked its morning greeting. Jason showered, shaved, put on the dress shirt he'd bought at Goodwill, and pressed with an iron he'd borrowed from his neighbor. He looked at himself in the mirror, tired eyes, jaw tight with tension, a man who'd lost weight he couldn't spare to lose. But standing, still standing, he grabbed his folder of evidence, his notebook of preparation, and left for the courthouse. The building was downtown, all concrete and glass and the weight of authority. People streamed through security, lawyers in expensive suits carrying leather briefcases, defendants in public defender consultations, families holding hands and hoping for justice. Jason found the family court wing, checked the docket posted outside the courtroom. Monroe v. Hale, 9:30 a.m. Rachel was already there, sitting on a bench outside the courtroom with her lawyer, Alan Morrison, according to his business card, which Rachel had included in her petition. He was 50-ish, gray at the temples, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Jason's monthly rent. Next to him sat two briefcases, one of which an assistant was unpacking onto a small rolling cart. Rachel saw Jason and her expression flickered. Guilt, determination, something else he couldn't read. Alan Morrison stood, extended his hand. "Mr. Hale." "Alan Morrison, I represent Miss Monroe." Jason shook it. Morrison's grip was firm, practiced, the handshake of someone who did this every day. "I assume you've retained counsel?" Morrison asked, glancing around as if expecting another lawyer to materialize. "I'm representing myself." Morrison's eyebrows rose slightly. "I see. Well, I'm sure you familiarized yourself with the rules of procedure. This is just a preliminary hearing, so I know what it is." "Of course." Morrison's smile was professional, slightly patronizing. "If you'd like to discuss a settlement before we go in, my client is willing to be reasonable about visitation schedules." "I don't want reasonable visitation. I want to keep the custody arrangement we already have." "Mr. Hale, I don't think you understand the position you're in. You're about to walk into that courtroom alone, facing a judge who sees dozens of these cases every month. Without legal representation, without the resources to properly present your case." "I'm presenting myself," Jason interrupted. "I'm presenting my relationship with my daughter. That should be enough." Morrison's smile tightened. Should be and will be are very different things in family law. The courtroom doors opened. A bailiff called out, "Monroe versus Hale." Rachel stood, smoothing her dress. Professional, expensive, probably chosen specifically for court. Alan Morrison and his assistant gathered their materials. The rolling cart full of evidence followed them inside. Jason picked up his single folder and followed. The courtroom was smaller than Jason expected, less dramatic. Fluorescent lights instead of the dramatic chandeliers he'd imagined. Plain wooden benches, an American flag in the corner. The judge's bench elevated but not throne-like. Judge Catherine Martinez was already seated, reviewing documents. She was late 40s, dark hair pulled back, reading glasses perched on her nose. Her expression was neutral, professional, tired. Someone who'd seen every variation of human conflict and learned not to be surprised by any of it. "Good morning," Judge Martinez said without looking up. "This is a preliminary hearing for modification of custody in the matter of Monroe versus Hale. Ms. Monroe is petitioning for primary physical custody of the minor child. Mr. Hale is representing himself today?" "Yes, Your Honor," Jason said, his voice sounding strange in the formal space. Judge Martinez finally looked up, studying Jason with an expression that was impossible to read. "Mr. Hale, I'm going to advise you that representing yourself in a custody matter is extremely difficult. You'll be held to the same standards as licensed attorneys. Do you understand that?" "I do, Your Honor." "Have you considered seeking legal representation? I can continue this hearing to give you time." "I've tried, Your Honor. I can't afford an attorney, and legal aid isn't available. I'm ready to proceed." A long pause. Judge Martinez removed her reading glasses. "Very well. Mr. Morrison, please proceed with your opening statement." Alan Morrison stood, buttoned his jacket, and launched into what was clearly a well-rehearsed speech. He spoke about stability, about resources, about the importance of providing children with educational opportunities and appropriate living space. He presented charts showing income disparities, photographs of Rachel's house versus Jason's apartment, expert testimony about child development and optimal living conditions. It was professional, polished, devastating. Every word was designed to paint Jason as inadequate, not evil, not abusive, just insufficient. A man who loved his daughter but couldn't provide for her properly. A man whose good intentions couldn't overcome practical limitations. When Morrison finished, he sat down with the satisfied expression of someone who'd just won. Judge Martinez turned to Jason. "Mr. Hale, your opening statement." Jason stood. His hands trembled slightly. In the gallery behind them, a few other people waiting for their own cases watched with mild interest. Another custody battle. Another father about to lose. "Your Honor," Jason began, his voice quiet. "I'm not a lawyer. I don't have charts or expert witnesses or photographs that make everything look worse than it is. I'm just a father who loves his daughter." Someone in the gallery laughed, a quiet, bitter sound. Judge Martinez's expression remained neutral. "Mr. Hale, this court needs more than declarations of love. Can you speak to the specific issues raised in the petition?" Jason's throat tightened. This was it, the moment where he either found the words or lost everything. He looked at Rachel, sitting beside her expensive lawyer with her perfect hair and her guilt-stricken eyes. Then he looked at the judge and found his voice. 3 years ago, when Rachel and I divorced, we agreed to split custody because we both loved Maya and we both wanted to be in her life. That's still true. I'm not here to say Rachel is a bad mother. She isn't. But I'm not a bad father either, and that's what this petition suggests. Jason opened his folder, pulled out a calendar. This is my work schedule for the past 6 months. Every time I've traded shifts, every time I've rearranged my hours, every time I've called in favors with coworkers, it's all to make sure I'm there for Maya. School pickup at 3:15, dinner at 6:00, homework help at 7:00, bedtime stories at 8:30. Every day that she's with me, Your Honor, I show up. He pulled out another paper. This is a letter from Maya's teacher, Mrs. Patterson. She says I've attended every parent-teacher conference, volunteered for every classroom event I could make with my schedule, and that Maya frequently talks about our time together. Morrison started to stand, probably to object, but Judge Martinez waved him down. Continue, Mr. Hale. The petition says my apartment is too small. It's 1 bedroom, that's true. Maya has the bedroom. I sleep on the couch. Is it ideal? No. But it's clean, it's safe, and it's filled with love. The petition says I can't provide adequate educational opportunities. Maya gets straight A's. She's in the community center music program learning guitar. We go to the library every week and she's reading at 2 grades above her level. The petition says my schedule is irregular. It is. But I've never once been late for a pickup or missed time with Maya because of work. Jason's voice strengthened. You want to know about stability, Your Honor? Stability isn't square footage. It's knowing that your father will be there when you wake up scared from a nightmare. It's knowing that someone will help you with your math homework even if they're tired from a long shift. It's knowing that you're loved, not because of what you have, but because of who you are. The courtroom was silent now. No more laughing. I'm not asking to take Maya away from her mother, Jason continued. I'm asking to keep being her father, not a visitor, not someone she sees every other weekend under supervision like I'm dangerous. I'm asking for what we already have, a daughter who splits her time between 2 parents who both love her. He looked at Rachel again. I know I can't give Maya everything Rachel can, but I can give her me, every morning, every bedtime, every ordinary moment that makes up a childhood. Isn't that worth something? Jason sat down. His hands were still shaking, but he'd said it. Everything he'd practiced, everything he'd agonized over during sleepless nights. Judge Martinez was quiet for a long moment. Mr. Morrison, you may call your first witness. And the battle truly began. Rachel Monroe took the witness stand with the practiced grace of someone accustomed to presentations and board meetings. She placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, and settled into the chair with her ankles crossed and her hands folded in her lap, every detail projecting competence and stability. Alan Morrison approached with a gentle smile, the kind reserved for friendly witnesses who would say exactly what you needed them to say. Miss Monroe, can you tell the court about your current living situation? Rachel's voice was steady, rehearsed. I live in a 3-bedroom house in Westbrook Estates. Maya has her own bedroom there, fully furnished with space for studying, playing, and having friends over. There's a backyard with a swing set and a neighborhood pool she has access to. And your employment? I'm a senior pharmaceutical sales representative for MedTech Solutions. I've been with the company for 9 years. My salary is $87,000 annually, plus bonuses and benefits. Morrison nodded approvingly. How would you characterize your relationship with your daughter? Maya is the most important person in my life, Rachel said, and Jason could hear the truth in it even as it was being weaponized against him. I want to give her every opportunity to succeed, to thrive, to have the childhood she deserves. And what concerns do you have about the current custody arrangement? Rachel glanced at Jason, then away. Jason loves Maya, I don't doubt that. But love isn't enough. She needs stability. A consistent home environment, her own space, the ability to participate in activities without worrying about which parent's house she's at or whether Jason can afford them. Can you give specific examples? Last month, Maya wanted to join her school's soccer team. The registration was $200 plus equipment. Jason said he couldn't afford it that week, so I ended up paying for it. But then the practice schedule conflicted with his custody days, and we had to rearrange everything. Morrison walked back to his table, consulted his notes. What about educational support? Maya is a bright child, but she needs resources, piano lessons, tutoring if necessary, educational trips. Jason does his best, but he's limited by his financial situation. I can provide those things without stress or compromise. Jason wanted to object, to stand up and say that Maya had never asked for piano lessons, that she loved the free guitar class at the community center, that the educational trips Rachel mentioned were weekends Maya spent with him at museums that offered free admission and parks where they hiked and he taught her about plants and birds and the names of constellations. But he didn't know how to object properly, didn't know the legal language, so he sat silent while Rachel painted a picture of a child deprived. Ms. Monroe, in your opinion, what would be in Maya's best interest? Rachel took a breath. I think Maya should primarily live with me, where she has her own room and access to everything she needs. Jason could have visitation, maybe alternating weekends, holidays. I'm not trying to remove him from her life. I just want her to have stability as her primary foundation. Thank you, Ms. Monroe. No further questions. Judge Martinez looked at Jason. Mr. Hale, do you wish to cross-examine? Jason stood, his notebook trembling in his hands. He'd watched enough legal dramas to know this was where he was supposed to destroy the witness with clever questions. But Rachel wasn't an enemy. She was Maya's mother, and everything she'd said came from a place of love, even if it was misguided. Rachel, he began, then caught himself. Sorry, Ms. Monroe. You said Maya needs her own room. Can you tell the court why you think that's more important than having equal time with both parents? Morrison started to stand, but Rachel answered before he could object. I don't think it's more important, Jason. I think it's part of a package of stability that... But Maya has her own room at my apartment, Jason interrupted. Yes, it's smaller than yours, but it's hers. She picked out the color we painted it. She arranged her stuffed animals exactly how she wanted them. It's her space. In a 1-bedroom apartment where you sleep on the couch, is there something wrong with a parent sacrificing their own comfort for their child? Morrison stood. Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Martinez said. Mr. Hale, please rephrase your questions as questions, not arguments. Jason nodded, trying to remember everything he'd read about cross-examination. Ms. Monroe, you mentioned Maya's soccer team. Do you know why the practice schedule conflicted with my custody days? Rachel hesitated. Because your work schedule is unpredictable? Because the coach scheduled practice on Wednesday evenings at 6, and I work until 5. I asked if practice could be at 6:30 so I'd have time to pick Maya up from school and get her there, but the coach said no. So I traded shifts with a coworker to get off at 4:30 every Wednesday. I made it work. Maya hasn't missed a single practice. But I still had to pay the registration, because the registration was due the week after my car needed a $250 repair to pass inspection. I wasn't choosing soccer over car maintenance, Rachel. I was trying to keep the car running so I could drive Maya to school and practice and everywhere else she needs to go. I paid you back 2 weeks later, remember? Rachel's composure cracked slightly. Yes, you did. And the guitar lessons you dismissed, did you know Maya loves them? Did you know her instructor says she has real talent? Did you know she plays me the songs she learns every week? Jason, I'm not saying you're not involved. Then what are you saying? That being involved isn't enough if you don't have money? That loving your child doesn't count if your apartment is small? Objection! Morrison's voice was sharp. Your Honor, Mr. Hale is testifying rather than asking questions. Sustained. Mr. Hale, last warning. Jason took a breath, forced himself to calm down. Ms. Monroe, when was the last time you attended one of Maya's guitar recitals? Silence. When was the last time you helped her with her homework? I work, Jason. I travel for my job. I work too. But I'm there. Every day that Maya is with me, I'm there. Can you say the same? Rachel's eyes filled with tears. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Jason said quietly. But we're here anyway. Morrison stood again. Your Honor, is this going somewhere? Judge Martinez looked at Jason. Mr. Hale, do you have any other questions for this witness? Jason looked at Rachel, really looked at her. He saw guilt there, and love, and the same exhaustion he felt. She genuinely believed she was doing the right thing. That's what made this so hard. No, Your Honor, no more questions. Rachel stepped down from the witness stand, her professional composure shattered. She returned to her seat beside Morrison, who leaned over to whisper something Jason couldn't hear. Morrison called his next witness, Dr. Eleanor Vance, a child psychologist who'd never met Maya, but had reviewed the materials provided and prepared to testify about optimal childhood development environments. Dr. Vance was 60-ish, gray hair and a neat bun, wearing a blazer with a university pin on the lapel. She had the air of someone whose expertise was unquestionable, whose every word carried the weight of academic authority. Morrison walked her through her credentials, PhD from Stanford, 30 years of practice, author of 2 books on child development, consultant for family courts across 3 states. Dr. Vance, based on your review of this case, what concerns do you have about the current custody arrangement? Dr. Vance opened a folder, though Jason suspected she had it memorized. Children Maya's age require stability and consistency. The current arrangement, with the child moving between homes multiple times per week, creates unnecessary disruption. Additionally, the disparity in living conditions between the 2 households can be confusing and potentially harmful to the child's sense of security. Can you elaborate on that? Certainly. When a child has her own room in one location and must share space with a parent in another, it sends mixed messages about her importance and value. When one parent can provide enrichment activities and the other cannot, the child may develop resentment or confusion about her circumstances. Jason's hands clenched under the table. This woman had never met Maya, never seen her room with its carefully chosen decorations, never heard her laugh about their camping trips on the living room couch when Jason told her stories before bed. In your professional opinion, what custody arrangement would best serve this child's needs? Primary residence with the parent who can provide consistent, stable living conditions and access to developmental resources. The other parent should maintain involvement through regular but less frequent visitation, perhaps alternating weekends and 1 evening per week for dinner. Thank you, Dr. Vance. Morrison sat down, satisfied. He just wrapped professional legitimacy around Rachel's petition, made it seem not just reasonable, but scientifically supported. Judge Martinez looked at Jason. Cross-examination? Jason stood, his mind racing. How do you cross-examine an expert? How do you argue with credentials and studies and professional opinions? Dr. Vance, you said you reviewed materials for this case. Did you ever meet Maya? No, but I reviewed comprehensive documentation. So you've never heard her voice? Never seen how she interacts with either parent? Dr. Vance's expression cooled. In-person evaluation isn't always necessary when sufficient documentation is available. What documentation did you review? The petition, photographs of both residences, financial records, and written summaries provided by Miss Monroe's attorney. Did you review anything I provided? A pause. I don't believe any materials were submitted by the respondent prior to my review. Because I didn't know I was supposed to provide materials to a psychologist I didn't know existed until this morning, Jason said, frustration bleeding into his voice. Morrison stood. Objection. Is there a question? Mr. Hale, Judge Martinez said, please ask your questions directly. Jason nodded. Dr. Vance, you said children need stability and consistency. Do you believe having equal time with both parents can provide that? In theory, yes, but practical factors often... Maya has had the same schedule for 3 years. She knows exactly where she'll be each day of the week. How is that not consistent? Consistency in schedule doesn't negate the impact of disparate living conditions. Have you considered that what matters most to a child isn't square footage, but feeling loved and secure? Of course, emotional security matters, but environmental factors. So if a child feels loved, safe, and secure in a smaller home, that's somehow less valid than a bigger house? Dr. Vance straightened in her seat. You're oversimplifying complex developmental psychology. Or maybe you're overcomplicating childhood. Maya isn't a research study. She's a little girl who loves both her parents and deserves to spend equal time with both of us. Mr. Hale, Judge Martinez interjected, that's a statement, not a question. I'm sorry, Your Honor. Jason took a breath. Dr. Vance, have you ever considered that what you call mixed messages about living conditions might actually be teaching Maya that people have different resources and circumstances, and that's okay? That love doesn't require wealth? Research suggests a lot of things, but every child is different, aren't they? Generally speaking, yes. And you can't really know what's best for Maya without meeting her, can you? Dr. Vance's jaw tightened. I can provide professional assessment based on established developmental principles. But not on Maya specifically, not on this specific child with her specific parents and her specific life. Objection, Morrison said, asked and answered. Sustained. Jason had no more questions, or rather he had 1,000 more, but no idea how to ask them properly. He sat down feeling like he'd landed a few punches, but the expert still stood, credentials intact, professional opinion unchanged. Morrison called 2 more witnesses that afternoon. Maya's current teacher, Mrs. Patterson, who spoke glowingly about Maya's academic performance, but admitted under Morrison's questioning that Maya had occasionally seemed tired on Mondays, and Rachel's mother, Patricia, who testified about the importance of family support systems. Patricia was the hardest. She'd always been kind to Jason, had sent him care packages after the divorce, had told him repeatedly that he was a good father. But now she sat in the witness stand and described Rachel's house as more suitable for child rearing, described the neighborhood as better for Maya's social development, described resources and opportunities that Jason simply couldn't match. When Jason's turn came to cross-examine, he could barely look at Patricia. Mrs. Monroe, you said Rachel has more family support nearby. Isn't it true that you live 40 minutes away? Yes, but I visit regularly. And you visit my apartment too, don't you? You've had dinner with Maya and me at least once a month for the past 3 years. Patricia looked pained. Yes, Jason, you've always welcomed me. Have you ever seen Maya unhappy at my apartment? No, but have you ever seen me mistreat her or neglect her in any way? Of course not, Jason. That's not what this is about. Then what is it about? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like everyone agrees I'm a good father, but I'm about to lose my daughter anyway because I don't make enough money. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. You're a wonderful father, but Rachel can give Maya advantages. Maya doesn't need advantages. She needs her father. Morrison objected again. Judge Martinez sustained it again, and Patricia stepped down looking like she wanted to apologize but couldn't. The hearing adjourned at 4:30 that afternoon. Judge Martinez scheduled a second hearing for 2 weeks later, when Jason would have the opportunity to present his case. 2 weeks to build a defense with no money, no expert witnesses, no way to match the professional polish of Morrison's presentation. In the courthouse hallway, Rachel approached Jason as he was gathering his materials. Jason, wait. He turned. Rachel looked exhausted, her earlier composure completely gone. What you said in there about me not being there, that wasn't fair. None of this is fair, Rachel. I know, but you made it sound like I don't care about Maya, and that's not true. I never said you don't care. I said you're not there. There's a difference. Rachel's voice rose slightly. I work to provide for her. So do I just don't make as much doing it. That's not... Rachel stopped, took a breath. Can we talk somewhere? Not here? They found a coffee shop 2 blocks from the courthouse, the kind with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. Rachel ordered a latte. Jason ordered black coffee because it was cheaper, and they sat across from each other like strangers who used to know everything about one another. Alan says I'm going to win, Rachel said quietly. I'm sure he does. That's what you're paying him for. He says even if you present a good case, judges almost always favor the more financially stable parent in situations like this. Why are you telling me this? Rachel stirred her latte, watching the foam swirl. Because I keep thinking about what you said, about showing up. And you're right, I don't show up the way you do. My job requires travel, client dinners, weekend conferences. I convinced myself that providing financial stability was enough, but what? But what if I'm wrong? What if Maya doesn't need a bigger house? What if she just needs us? Jason felt something crack in his chest. Hope, maybe, or just exhaustion that felt like hope. Then withdraw the petition, he said. Let's go back to the way things were. We can work on the schedule, adjust things if we need to, but don't take her away from me, Rachel. Alan says, I don't care what Alan says. What do you say? What does your gut tell you? Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Outside the window, people hurried past in the late afternoon sun. People going home to their families, their normal lives, their problems that didn't involve courtrooms and custody battles. My gut says I'm scared, Rachel finally admitted. Scared that Maya will grow up and resent me for working so much. Scared that having her primarily with me will somehow fix that, give us more time together, make me feel like less of a failure as a mother. You're not a failure. Neither are you, Jason, but Alan made it all sound so logical. Primary custody with me, and Maya would have her own room, stable schedule, access to opportunities. It made sense on paper. We're not on paper. We're her parents. Rachel looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. I don't know what to do. Yes, you do. You've always known what's right. You're just letting fear and Alan Morrison make you doubt it. What if the judge rules in my favor? What then? Then I lose the most important thing in my life, and Maya loses half her childhood with her father. That's what. Rachel stood abruptly. I need to think. Rachel, I said I need to think, Jason. She left her latte half-finished, walking out into the afternoon light, leaving Jason alone at the table with his lukewarm coffee and the weight of everything unsaid. That night, Maya called from Rachel's house, their scheduled evening phone call. Hi, Daddy, Jason forced his voice to sound normal. Hey, baby, how was your day? Good. We had gym class and I climbed all the way to the top of the rope. Mrs. Patterson said I was brave. That's because you are brave. Mommy seems sad. She says she's just tired, but I think she's sad. Jason's heart clenched. Sometimes grown-ups have things on their mind that make them seem sad, even when they're not, sweetheart. Is she sad because of the court thing? Jason froze. What do you know about the court thing? I heard her on the phone with Grandma. She said something about custody and you representing yourself, and Maya's voice got smaller. Daddy, are you and Mommy fighting about me? This was the moment every divorced parent dreaded, when the child realized they were the subject of adult conflict, when innocence cracked under the weight of grown-up problems. Maya, listen to me. Mommy and I are not fighting about you. We're both just trying to figure out the best way to take care of you, that's all. But I like the way things are now. I don't want them to change. I know, baby. Can you tell the judge that? Can you tell them I don't want things to change? It's a little more complicated than that. Why do grown-ups always say things are complicated when they mean they won't listen? Out of the mouths of 8-year-olds. You're right, Jason admitted. Sometimes we do that, and I'm sorry. Will you still be my daddy even if you're not my lawyer? Despite everything, Jason smiled. I'll always be your daddy, Maya. No matter what happens, no matter what any judge says, I'll always be your daddy. Promise? I promise. Now tell me what you're reading in school. Maya launched into a detailed summary of a book about dragons and princesses and magic spells, her voice animated and happy, And for 15 minutes, Jason could pretend that everything was normal, that his world wasn't potentially falling apart in 2 weeks. After they said goodnight, Jason sat in his quiet apartment and pulled out his trial notebook. He'd been so focused on defending himself against Rachel's petition that he hadn't really thought about presenting his own case, about what evidence he could offer, what witnesses he might call, how to show the judge not just that Rachel's claims were exaggerated, but that what he offered Maya was genuinely valuable. He made a list of potential witnesses: Maya's guitar teacher at the community center, his coworker Darius, who'd traded countless shifts so Jason could be at school events, Mrs. Chen from the apartment next door, who sometimes watched Maya for an hour when Jason's shift ran late. None of them had PhDs. None of them could speak about optimal developmental environments. But they'd seen Jason parent day in and day out, in the trenches of ordinary life. He also wrote questions he wanted to ask himself if he took the stand, because Morrison would certainly cross-examine him aggressively, and Jason needed to be prepared. Why don't you have your own bedroom? Because Maya's childhood is more important than my comfort. Why can't you afford soccer registration fees when they're due? Because life happens, car repairs, medical bills, unexpected expenses. But I always find a way to make things work for Maya. Isn't it true that Rachel can provide a better material life? Material life isn't the same as a better life. Around midnight, Jason's phone buzzed with a text from Angela. How did it go? He typed back, "Not great. Morrison is good. Rachel brought an expert witness I never knew existed. I'm way out of my depth. But you fought?" "I fought." "Then you didn't lose, not yet." Jason wished he shared her optimism. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation and doubt. Jason spent every evening after Maya went to bed reading family law cases, watching videos about trial procedure, reaching out to his potential witnesses to ask if they'd testify. His coworker Darius agreed immediately. "Brother, I've seen you move mountains for that little girl. Whatever you need, I'm there." Mrs. Chen was more hesitant. Her English wasn't perfect, and she was nervous about speaking in court, but she eventually agreed. "Maya is good girl. You are good father, I tell them." The guitar teacher, Marcus, a grad student who ran the community center program, said he'd never testified before but would try his best. Maya lights up the whole class. She talks about you constantly, the songs you sing with her, how you're learning guitar too so you can practice together. That kind of involvement is rare. Jason also subpoenaed Maya's school records, her medical records, documentation of every school event he'd attended. He created a photo album, not staged professional photos, but real life. Maya's crayon drawings on the refrigerator, their Saturday morning pancake tradition, the Halloween costume they'd made together from cardboard and paint, library trips, park adventures, ordinary moments that made up their extraordinary life together. It felt like bringing a knife to a gunfight, but it was all he had. The second hearing arrived too quickly. Jason barely slept the night before, running through potential questions and answers until the words blurred together. At the courthouse, Morrison looked even more confident than before. He had additional materials, 3 more file folders, what looked like a printed PowerPoint presentation. Rachel looked conflicted, less sure than she had at the first hearing, more worn down by the process. Judge Martinez called them to order. "Mr. Hale, you may present your case." Jason stood, his heart hammering. This was it, his chance to prove that fatherhood couldn't be measured in dollars or square footage. "Your Honor, I'd like to call my first witness, Darius Williams." Darius walked to the stand wearing his best suit, the one he wore to church. He swore his oath and sat down, looking at Jason with steady eyes that said, "I got you, brother." "Mr. Williams, how do you know me?" "We work together at Superior Logistics, have for about 2 years now." "Can you describe what you've observed about my relationship with my daughter?" "Objection," Morrison said, standing. "Relevance. Mr. Williams isn't qualified to assess parent-child relationships." "Your Honor," Jason said quickly, "I'm not asking for a professional assessment. I'm asking about first-hand observations." "I'll allow it. Proceed." Darius nodded. "Jason talks about Maya constantly, shows us pictures, tells us funny things she said. But more than that, I've seen him rearrange his entire life for her. He'll trade shifts at the last minute if Maya has a school thing. He'll skip lunch breaks to call and check on her if she's sick. One time he came to work on 3 hours of sleep because Maya had a nightmare, and he stayed up with her all night, and he still pulled a full shift without complaining. Has this affected his work performance? The opposite. Jason's one of our best supervisors. The guys respect him because he works hard and he's fair. And honestly, seeing how dedicated he is as a father makes us all want to be better at our jobs. Jason felt his throat tighten. Thank you, Darius. No further questions. Morrison approached for cross-examination, his expression skeptical. Mr. Williams, you're friends with Mr. Hale, correct? Yeah, we're friends. So you're here to support him, help him keep custody. I'm here to tell the truth. And isn't the truth that Mr. Hale's unpredictable schedule makes it difficult for him to maintain consistent childcare? No. The truth is he makes his schedule work through sheer willpower. But you've witnessed him being tired, stressed, struggling to balance work and parenting? I've witnessed him being human. Haven't you ever been tired or stressed? A few people in the gallery snickered. Judge Martinez hid a smile. Morrison's jaw tightened. No further questions. Jason called Mrs. Chen next, who testified in halting English about the times she'd watched Maya, about what a polite and happy child she was, about the love evident between father and daughter. Morrison tried to shake her testimony by focusing on language barriers and asking if she was qualified to judge parenting, but Mrs. Chen stood firm. I raise 4 children, she said. I know good father when I see one. Marcus, the guitar teacher, testified about Maya's enthusiasm, her natural talent, her constant mentions of her father learning alongside her. Kids with engaged parents are different, Marcus said. They light up when talking about their families. Maya is one of those kids. She feels seen, valued, loved. Morrison's cross-examination suggested that free community center classes were inferior to private lessons, that Maya's talent would be better served by professional instruction that Rachel could afford. Marcus didn't budge. Music isn't about money. It's about passion. Maya has that in spades, and a big part of that is because her father encourages it without making it about status or achievement. He lets her love it for its own sake. By the time Jason's witnesses were finished, it was late afternoon. Judge Martinez looked tired, ready to adjourn. Your Honor, Jason said, I have one more witness. Myself. Morrison perked up. This was what he'd been waiting for, the chance to cross-examine Jason directly, to tear apart his claims under oath. Go ahead, Mr. Hale. Jason took the stand, swore to tell the truth, and sat in the same chair where Rachel and the expert witnesses had sat. From this angle, the courtroom looked different, larger, more intimidating. Mr. Hale, Jason said to himself, feeling ridiculous. Why should you maintain the current custody arrangement? He looked at Rachel, at Judge Martinez, at the few people still sitting in the gallery. Because Maya is my daughter, and being her father isn't something I do part-time or when it's convenient. It's who I am. Every decision I make, every shift I work, every sacrifice I choose, it's all for her. I'm not a perfect parent. I make mistakes, but I show up. Every single day that Maya is with me, I show up. He pulled out his worn notebook. This is 3 years of my life in handwritten notes. Every shift trade, every school event, every dentist appointment and park trip and bedtime story. I didn't keep these records to prove anything. I kept them because this is my life and Maya is the center of it. Jason's voice broke slightly. I know I can't give her everything Rachel can, but I can give her something that money can't buy. Consistency of presence, unconditional love, a father who chose her above everything else in his life. That has to count for something. He stepped down from the witness stand and Morrison approached with the predatory smile of a lawyer who'd been waiting for this moment. Mr. Hale, you say you show up for Maya, but isn't it true you sleep on a couch because you can't afford a larger apartment? It's true I sleep on the couch, but it's not because I can't afford anything else. It's because I chose to prioritize Maya having her own space over my comfort. And if you could afford better, would you? Of course, but there's a difference between can't and haven't yet. Morrison paced. You mentioned sacrifices. Let's talk about what Maya sacrifices because of your financial situation. She can't have her own room with a door that closes. She can't participate in activities without causing scheduling conflicts. She can't have friends over comfortably. Isn't that true? Maya has friends over all the time. We make pizzas and watch movies and have living room campouts. She's never once complained about the apartment being too small. Because she's 8 years old and doesn't know what she's missing. Objection, Jason said, then realized he couldn't object to his own cross-examination. That's speculation. Judge Martinez nodded. Mr. Morrison, stick to facts. Morrison shifted tactics. Mr. Hale, how many times in the past year has your financial situation caused you stress? I don't know. I don't count. Estimate. Money is always a concern, but it doesn't affect Maya. Doesn't it? When you're worried about making rent? When you're choosing between car repairs and soccer registration? When you're working overtime and coming home exhausted? Doesn't Maya notice? Jason paused. It was a trap, but it was also true. Maya notices I'm tired sometimes. She also notices I never give up, that I always find a way. Isn't that a valuable lesson? Or is it teaching her that struggling is normal, that barely getting by is something to aspire to? It's teaching her that love means sacrifice, that family means showing up even when it's hard, that her father will never stop fighting for her. Morrison leaned against the witness box. Let me ask you directly, Mr. Hale. If you could afford a better life for Maya, wouldn't you choose that? Of course. So you agree Rachel can provide a better life? Rachel can provide a more expensive life. That's not the same thing. No further questions. Jason returned to his table, feeling like he'd survived a boxing match, still standing, but bruised. Judge Martinez looked at the clock. It was past 5 p.m. I'm going to take all testimony under advisement, she said. I'll issue my ruling within 2 weeks. Until then, the current custody arrangement remains in effect. The gavel fell, and it was over. Outside the courthouse, Jason sat on a bench and let the evening wash over him. He'd done everything he could, said everything he knew to say. Now his daughter's future was in the hands of a judge he'd met twice. His phone buzzed. A text from Maya. Can we have spaghetti when I come home tomorrow? Jason typed back. We can have anything you want, baby. Because tomorrow she'd still be his daughter, regardless of what any court decided. And Jason Hale would keep being her father until his last breath. The 2 weeks that followed felt like living in suspended animation. Jason went through the motions of ordinary life, making breakfast, going to work, helping with homework, while his entire future hung in the balance of a decision being made in some judge's chambers downtown. Maya seemed to sense the tension, even though both Jason and Rachel tried to hide it. She was quieter than usual, more clingy during transitions between houses, asking questions that had no good answers. Daddy, if the judge says I have to live with Mommy more, will you be sad? They were sitting at their small kitchen table, Maya working on a math worksheet while Jason pretended to read the newspaper. The question hit him like a physical blow. Baby, let's not worry about things that haven't happened yet. But if it does happen? Jason set down the newspaper, looked at his daughter's worried face. If it happens, yes, I'll be sad. Very sad. But you know what won't change? What? How much I love you. That stays the same no matter what any judge decides. Maya considered this, chewing on her pencil eraser. Mommy cries sometimes when she thinks I'm not listening. She does? Yeah, on the phone with Grandma. She says she doesn't know if she's doing the right thing. Jason's heart clenched. He wanted to press for more information, to understand what Rachel was thinking, but he couldn't put Maya in the middle any more than she already was. Your mom loves you very much, Maya. We both do. And sometimes when grown-ups love someone a lot, it makes decisions really hard because we want everything to be perfect for you. I don't need perfect. I just need you and Mommy to stop being sad. Out of the mouths of children. That night, after Maya fell asleep, Jason sat on the couch that doubled as his bed and tried to imagine what life would look like if he lost. Alternating weekends meant seeing Maya 4 days a month instead of 16, missing 3/4 of her bedtime stories, her morning conversations, her random middle-of-the-day thoughts about clouds or dinosaurs or why the sky changed colors. He tried to imagine someone supervising his visits, watching him be a father, as if he were dangerous, as if the past 3 years of scraped knees and helped homework and patient explanations about why vegetables were important counted for nothing. The thought made him physically ill. His phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Can we talk? Not about the case, about Maya. Jason called her immediately. Hey, Rachel answered, her voice tired. What's wrong? Is Maya okay? She's fine physically, but Jason, she's so anxious. She asked me tonight if we were getting rid of her because we couldn't decide where she should live. What did you tell her? That we both love her and nobody's getting rid of anybody. But she's 8 years old and she's watching her parents fight in court. How is that not damaging her? Jason heard the crack in Rachel's voice, the doubt that had been building since the hearings began. I don't know, he admitted. I've been asking myself the same thing. Alan says the judge will rule in my favor. He's very confident. I'm sure he is. But Maya asked me something tonight that I couldn't answer. What? She asked why I wanted her to live with me more if it made Daddy sad. Silence stretched between them, filled with all the complications of divorce and love and good intentions that somehow created suffering. Rachel, I'm not withdrawing the petition, she said quickly. I can't. I've come this far and I genuinely believe that stability matters, that resources matter, that money matters more than presence? That's not what I said. It's what you're arguing in court. Rachel's voice hardened. You're the one who made this antagonistic, Jason. I offered you reasonable visitation. Reasonable to who? Not to me. Not to Maya. We're going in circles. Because you won't admit that you're wrong. And you won't admit that I might be right. They both fell silent, the argument exhausting them the way it always did. Two people who once loved each other enough to create a life together, now barely able to have a civil conversation. I have to go, Rachel finally said. I just wanted you to know that Maya is struggling. I know, I see it too. Then maybe we should... She stopped. Should what? Nothing. Never mind. Good night, Jason. She hung up before he could respond. Jason sat in the dark apartment, streetlight filtering through the blinds, creating shadows that looked like prison bars across the wall. Somewhere in the building, a door slammed, a dog barked. Normal sounds of normal life that felt distant and unreachable. The next day was Saturday, which meant Jason had Maya. They made their traditional chocolate chip pancakes, walked to the library for new books, spent the afternoon at the park, where Maya climbed on the jungle gym, and Jason pushed her on the swings until his arms ached. Everything felt more precious now, more fragile. Every laugh, every shared joke, every moment together carried the weight of potential loss. Higher, Daddy, Maya called from the swing. Jason pushed harder, watching his daughter arc into the blue sky, her hair flying behind her, her laughter pure and unselfconscious. This was what mattered. Not square footage or income brackets or expert testimony about optimal developmental environments. This moment, this connection, this love. If he lost custody, he'd lose thousands of these moments. They'd become occasional treats rather than ordinary life, scheduled visits rather than spontaneous adventures. The thought was unbearable. That evening, while making spaghetti, Maya's request from earlier in the week, Jason's phone rang, unknown number. Hello? Mr. Hale? This is Judge Martinez's clerk calling. The judge has reached a decision in your custody case and has scheduled a hearing for Monday morning at 9 a.m. to announce her ruling. Jason's stomach dropped. Monday, 2 days away. Both parties need to be present? Yes, sir. Along with any attorneys of record. Okay, thank you. Jason hung up, his hands trembling. Maya was setting the table, carefully placing forks and napkins the way he'd taught her, humming a song from her guitar class. 2 more days of not knowing. 2 more days of this limbo between the life he had and the life he might lose. He texted Rachel. Clerk called, ruling on Monday at 9 a.m. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, I know, Alan just told me. How are you feeling? The dots appeared and disappeared several times before Rachel finally responded. Terrified. It was the most honest thing she'd said to him in months. Me too, he typed back. Sunday passed in slow motion. Jason tried to make it normal. Church, followed by lunch at the burger place Maya loved, then an afternoon of coloring and watching movies on the couch. But everything felt tinged with potential goodbye, every moment shadowed by Monday's looming decision. That night, After putting Maya to bed, Jason stood in the doorway of her room watching her sleep. Her stuffed elephant was tucked under one arm, her blanket pulled up to her chin, one foot sticking out because she always got too hot. He'd memorized every detail of her, the way her nose crinkled when she smiled, the cowlick at her crown that never laid flat, the small scar on her knee from when she'd fallen off her bike 2 summers ago. 3 years of these moments. 3 years of being the one who knew she liked her sandwich crust cut off, who understood that she needed the closet light on but not the overhead light, who could tell the difference between her tired cry and her scared cry and her hurt cry. If Judge Martinez ruled against him, someone else might learn these things. Rachel would learn them again, or a step-parent someday might learn them, or Maya might grow out of needing someone to know them at all. The thought broke something in Jason's chest. "Please," he whispered to whatever force might be listening, God or fate or the universe itself. "Please don't take this from me." Maya stirred in her sleep, murmured something about dragons, then settled deeper into her pillow. Jason closed her door to just a crack, the way she liked it, and returned to his couch that was never quite long enough, wrapping himself in the thin blanket that had been part of their shared life before the divorce. Monday morning arrived too quickly and too slowly at the same time. Jason dressed in his court shirt, now wrinkled despite his best efforts with the borrowed iron. He dropped Maya at school with Rachel, their exchange awkward and silent, while Maya looked between them with worried eyes. "Are you going to court again?" Maya asked. "Yes, baby," Rachel said. "Can I come?" "Not this time, sweetheart," Jason said, kneeling to her level. "But whatever happens, remember what I told you. Nothing changes how much we love you." Maya hugged him fiercely. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, Maya. So much." At the courthouse, Alan Morrison was already setting up his materials, confident and relaxed. Rachel sat beside him looking pale and drawn, wearing a navy dress that probably cost more than Jason's monthly grocery budget. Jason took his seat at the defendant's table, alone, as he'd been through this entire process, and tried to steady his breathing. Judge Martinez entered at exactly 9 o'clock. Everyone stood, then sat. The courtroom felt different today, heavier, more final. "I've reviewed all testimony and evidence presented in this matter," Judge Martinez began, her reading glasses perched on her nose, a thick folder open before her. "This has been a difficult case because both parents clearly love their child and want what's best for her." Jason's heart hammered against his ribs. "The court must consider several factors in custody determinations. Each parent's ability to provide for the child's physical needs, emotional needs, educational needs, and overall stability. The court must also consider the child's relationship with each parent and any preference the child might express." Judge Martinez looked up from her notes, directly at Jason and Rachel. "Ms. Monroe has presented a compelling case about her ability to provide material advantages, better housing, more financial resources, greater access to educational opportunities. Mr. Morrison's presentation was thorough and professional." Morrison allowed himself a small smile. "However," Judge Martinez continued, "Mr. Hale has presented an equally compelling case about something that cannot be measured in square footage or dollar amounts: consistent, engaged presence in his daughter's life." Jason felt a flicker of hope. The expert testimony provided by Dr. Vance was concerning to this court primarily because Dr. Vance never met the child in question. While professional assessment has its place, I'm reluctant to give significant weight to opinions formed without direct observation. Morrison's smile faded. "I was particularly struck by the testimony of Mr. Hale's witnesses, not because they were particularly articulate or professional, but because they spoke to daily, consistent involvement. A coworker who has watched Mr. Hale rearrange his entire life around his daughter's needs. A neighbor who sees the love and care in their home. A teacher who witnesses a child's joy when discussing her father's involvement in her interests." Judge Martinez removed her glasses. This court has seen many custody cases where one parent has significantly more financial resources than the other. Sometimes those resources translate to genuinely better care. Sometimes they don't. In this case, I find that while Ms. Monroe can certainly provide more material advantages, Mr. Hale provides something equally valuable: devoted, consistent parenting. Rachel's hands clenched in her lap. "That said, I am troubled by the current custody arrangement for a different reason than those cited in the petition. Maya is 8 years old, attending school full-time, and the current schedule has her moving between homes 4 times per week. That is disruptive, regardless of the quality of care at each location. Jason felt his stomach drop. Was she going to rule for Rachel after all? Therefore, the court's ruling is as follows. The courtroom door opened. Everyone turned. Patricia, Rachel's mother, stood in the doorway holding Maya's hand. "I'm sorry to interrupt, Your Honor," Patricia said, her voice shaking. "But Maya insisted on being here. She said she had something important to say." Judge Martinez's expression shifted to surprise, then concern. "Mrs. Monroe, this is highly irregular. Children are not typically present for custody rulings. I know, Your Honor, but she wouldn't stop crying. She said nobody was listening to what she wanted." Maya pulled away from her grandmother and ran down the courtroom aisle, her school backpack bouncing against her shoulders, her face streaked with tears. She ran straight to Jason. He caught her as she wrapped her arms around his neck, sobbing into his shoulder. Jason held her, his own eyes burning with tears he'd been holding back for weeks. "I'm sorry, baby," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Don't let them take me away from you, Daddy. Please don't let them." The courtroom was silent. Morrison had half risen from his seat. Rachel sat frozen, her hand over her mouth. Judge Martinez watched the scene with an expression that was impossible to read. Finally, she spoke. "Maya, is it?" Maya turned in Jason's arms but didn't let go of him. "Yes, ma'am." "Would you like to talk to me?" Maya nodded, wiping her nose on her sleeve. Judge Martinez gestured to the witness stand. "Come on up here." Maya looked at Jason. He nodded, even though every instinct told him to hold her tighter and never let go. She climbed down from his lap and walked to the witness stand, her small form dwarfed by the large chair. The bailiff brought over a phone book for her to sit on so she could see over the bench. Maya sat, her legs swinging, her hands gripping the armrests. "Maya, do you know why your parents are here today?" Judge Martinez asked, her voice gentler than it had been all morning. "Because they're fighting about where I should live. And do you understand what that means? It means maybe I won't get to see Daddy as much. How does that make you feel?" Maya's chin trembled. "Scared. And sad. Really, really sad." "Can you tell me why?" "Because Daddy takes care of me. He makes my breakfast and helps me with homework and plays guitar with me and reads me stories. He knows I don't like my sandwich crusts and I need the closet light on at night. And when I have a bad dream, he stays with me until I'm not scared anymore." Judge Martinez nodded. "Those are important things. Does your mother do these things too?" "Sometimes. But Mommy works a lot. She travels and has meetings, and sometimes she's really tired. I love Mommy, but Daddy is the one who's always there." Rachel made a sound somewhere between a sob and a gasp. "Maya," Judge Martinez said carefully, "if you could choose where you wanted to live, what would you choose?" Morrison stood. "Your Honor, I must object. The child is 8 years old and cannot possibly understand the complexity." Overruled. "The child has already interrupted these proceedings. We might as well hear what she has to say. Continue, Maya." Maya looked at her mother, then at her father, then back at the judge. "I like having 2 houses. I like being with both of them. But if I can only pick one..." Her voice got very small. "I want to stay with Daddy." Rachel's professional composure shattered completely. She began to cry, not quietly, but with the full force of a mother hearing her child choose someone else, hearing the truth about her absences finally spoken aloud. Jason felt his own tears spill over. This was what he'd wanted, for Maya's voice to be heard, for her preference to matter. But watching Rachel break apart, seeing the pain on her face, Jason felt no triumph, only sadness that love had been forced into competition, that presence and provision had been placed on opposite sides of a courtroom. Maya climbed down from the witness stand and ran to her mother. "I'm sorry, Mommy. I still love you. I love you so much. But Daddy needs me more." Rachel gathered Maya into her arms, holding her daughter while she cried. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." Judge Martinez gave them a moment, then cleared her throat. "This court will take a 15-minute recess. I suggest both parents use this time to speak with their daughter. When we reconvene, I'll issue my final ruling." The gavel fell. Jason stood on shaking legs and walked to where Rachel held Maya. For a moment, the three of them just stood there, a family broken and trying to figure out how to be whole again. "Rachel," Jason said quietly. She looked up at him, mascara running down her face, all her courtroom polish gone. "I don't want Maya to have to choose," Jason said. "I never wanted that." "Neither did I, but Alan said—" Rachel stopped, looked at her expensive lawyer sitting at his table reviewing notes, already moving on to his next case. "Alan said a lot of things that made sense when he was explaining them, but feel wrong now." "So what do we do?" Rachel wiped her eyes, leaving black smudges on her hands. "I don't know. What does Maya need? Not what I want, not what you want. What does she actually need?" They both looked down at Maya, who was holding both their hands, looking between them with hope dawning in her tear-streaked face. "She needs both of us," Jason said, "not fighting, not competing, both of us actually being her parents. But the schedule. Judge Martinez is right that moving 4 times a week is a lot. Then we change it, week on, week off, or 5 days, 2 days, whatever works best for Maya's school and activities. We figure it out together, not through lawyers." Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to Alan Morrison. "Alan, I need to speak with you privately." They stepped into the hallway. Jason sat on the courtroom bench with Maya in his lap, holding her the way he had when she was tiny and the world was simpler. "Did I do the right thing, Daddy, coming here?" "You spoke your truth, baby. That's always the right thing." "Is Mommy mad at me?" "No, she's not mad. She's just sad that she hasn't been there as much as she wanted to be." "Can she be there more now? Can things be different?" Before Jason could answer, Rachel returned with Morrison trailing behind her, looking irritated. Rachel approached the bench where Jason and Maya sat. Her eyes were red but clear, her expression resolved. "I'm withdrawing my petition," she said. Jason's breath caught. "What?" "I'm withdrawing it. Alan thinks I'm crazy, but I'm doing it anyway." "Rachel, you were right, Jason. Not about everything, but about the important thing. Maya doesn't need a bigger house. She needs us, both of us, working together instead of fighting. And she's right that you've been more present than I have. I convinced myself that providing financially was enough, but it's not. It's never been enough." "You're a good mother." "I know I am, but I could be a better one. And dragging you through court, trying to take away the custody arrangement that's working, fighting over our daughter like she's territory to be won. That's not making me a better mother. It's just making all 3 of us miserable." Morrison stepped forward. "Ms. Monroe, I strongly advise against this decision. We have an excellent chance of—" "I don't care about chances, Alan. I care about my daughter. And my daughter is sitting here choosing her father because he shows up for her every single day, and I can either fight that or I can learn from it." "You're making an emotional decision." "I'm making the right decision. We're done here. Send me your final bill." Morrison looked like he wanted to argue further, but something in Rachel's expression stopped him. He gathered his materials with sharp, angry movements and left the courtroom. Judge Martinez returned, taking her seat with a raised eyebrow at the scene before her. Rachel standing with Jason and Maya, the 3 of them together instead of on opposite sides. "Has something changed?" the judge asked. Rachel approached the bench. "Yes, Your Honor. I'm formally withdrawing my petition for modification of custody." "Miss Monroe, do you understand that if you withdraw now, you cannot refile on the same grounds for at least 1 year?" "I understand, Your Honor." "And you're doing this of your own free will, not under duress or pressure?" "Completely of my own free will. I made a mistake, Your Honor. I let someone convince me that resources mattered more than relationship, that stability was about houses instead of hearts. My daughter just set me straight." Judge Martinez looked at Maya, then at Jason, then back at Rachel. "Miss Monroe, I've been on this bench for 17 years. I've seen thousands of custody cases. What I almost never see is a parent having the wisdom and courage to recognize when they're wrong and the grace to correct it. That speaks very highly of your character." Rachel's voice wavered. "Thank you, Your Honor. The petition is withdrawn. The current custody order remains in effect. However, I'm going to strongly recommend that both of you work together to modify the schedule to something less disruptive for Maya. Perhaps week on, week off, or a 5-2 split. The court can facilitate mediation if you need it, or you can work it out privately. We'll work it out, Jason said, looking at Rachel. Together. Very well. This matter is concluded. The gavel fell one final time. Outside the courthouse, the three of them stood in the morning sunlight, Jason, Rachel, and Maya, no longer opponents, but just a family trying to figure out how to move forward. I should get Maya back to school, Rachel said. She's missing math. Can we all go together? Maya asked. I want both of you to take me. Rachel and Jason looked at each other, really looked at each other for the first time in months without the filter of lawyers and courtrooms and accusations. Yeah, Jason said. We can do that. They walked to the parking garage together, Maya between them holding both their hands. It wasn't perfect. The divorce was still real. The separate lives were still real. The difficulties ahead were still real. But for the first time since Rachel had filed her petition, the future felt like something they could build instead of something they had to survive. In the car, Rachel's because it had more room, Maya chattered about her math test and her upcoming guitar recital and whether they could all go out for ice cream afterward. Both of you? She asked hopefully. Together? Rachel glanced at Jason in the rearview mirror. He shrugged. Sure, baby, Rachel said. We can do ice cream together. Maya beamed, and in that smile Jason saw the future, not the one he'd feared in courtroom nightmares, but one where his daughter grew up knowing that even though her parents weren't together, they were still a family, still a team, still committed to her happiness above their own conflict. It wasn't the ending Jason had imagined when he first walked into that courtroom alone, terrified and underprepared. It was better. Because sometimes the real victory isn't winning in court, it's everyone choosing to stop fighting. They dropped Maya at school together, watching her run through the front doors with her backpack bouncing, turning once to wave at both of them standing side by side. The normalcy of it, two parents dropping off their child, felt almost revolutionary after months of careful choreography to avoid each other. Rachel stood beside her car in the parking lot, keys in hand but making no move to leave. Jason shifted his weight, uncertain of the protocol. They'd been adversaries for so long that peace felt unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable. So, Rachel said finally. So, Jason echoed. That was intense. That's one word for it. Rachel laughed. A real laugh, not the practiced one she'd used in the courtroom. I can't believe I just fired a lawyer I paid $10,000 to and withdrew a petition I spent 2 months building. 10,000? Jason felt his stomach drop. Rachel, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to cost you. Don't. I made the choice to file. I made the choice to hire Alan, and I made the choice to listen to him when he told me Maya would be better off primarily with me. She leaned against her car. He was very convincing. Charts and statistics and expert testimony. It all sounded so logical. It did sound logical. That's what scared me. But it was wrong. Maya made that clear. Jason moved to lean against the car beside her, both of them facing the school where their daughter was probably already telling her friends about her dramatic courthouse appearance. You're not a bad mother, Rachel. I never wanted the court to think that. I know. But I haven't been as present as I should be, as I could be. Rachel's voice cracked slightly. When Maya said you need her more, she was right. I've been so focused on providing for her that I forgot she needs me to just be with her. You travel for work. That's different from choosing to be absent. Is it? Because I could have said no to some of those trips. I could have set boundaries with my job, prioritized being home more. I just convinced myself that climbing the ladder, making more money, giving Maya material advantages, that all of that was more important than bedtime stories. Jason was quiet for a moment, watching a school bus pull away, thinking about all the times he'd traded shifts or worked overtime or sacrificed his own needs to be present for Maya. I think we both did what we thought was right, he said finally. You focused on financial security because that's real and important. I focused on being present because that's what I could offer. Neither of us was wrong. We just emphasized different things. But Maya chose you. Maya chose consistency. She chose the parent who's been there every morning and every night on custody days. That doesn't mean she doesn't love you or need you, Rachel. It means she knows she can count on me for daily stuff. and she knows she can count on you for other things. Like what? Money for soccer registration? Like being the parent who shows her that women can have careers and ambitions. Like teaching her about working hard and achieving goals. Like demonstrating that you don't have to sacrifice everything to be a good mother. Jason turned to look at Rachel directly. Maya needs both of us. She needs my pancakes and your professional success. She needs my consistent presence and your example of what's possible. We're not in competition. We're supposed to be a team. Rachel wiped her eyes. When did you get so wise? Somewhere between filing bankruptcy and representing myself in family court. You didn't file bankruptcy. Not yet, but I've gotten close a few times. Rachel was quiet for a long moment, then reached into her purse and pulled out her checkbook. What are you doing? Jason asked. Writing you a check for $5,000. Rachel, no. I'm paying you back half of what I spent on legal fees. You shouldn't have had to go through this alone because you couldn't afford representation. I can't take your money. It's not my money. It's money I shouldn't have spent fighting you in the first place. She finished writing the check and held it out. Please, Jason, let me do this one thing to make it right. Jason stared at the check. $5,000, more money than he'd seen in one place since the divorce. It could cover 3 months of rent, repair his car properly, buy Maya new clothes instead of thrift store finds, ease the constant financial pressure that had been crushing him for 3 years. It could also feel like charity, like admitting he couldn't provide for his daughter without help. But pride was expensive, and Jason had learned the hard way that sometimes accepting help was the stronger choice. Thank you, he said, taking the check. But I'm putting half of this into a savings account for Maya's college fund. Deal. They stood in the parking lot a while longer, neither quite ready to return to their separate lives. Other parents came and went, dropping off forgotten lunchboxes and permission slips, the ordinary chaos of school mornings that Jason and Rachel had once navigated together. We should probably figure out that schedule change Judge Martinez mentioned, Rachel said. The 4 times a week thing really is a lot for Maya. What were you thinking? Maybe week on, week off? That way Maya has stability at each house for longer stretches, and we both get real time with her instead of these quick handoffs. Jason considered it. Week on would mean 7 straight days without Maya, 7 days of coming home to an empty apartment, 7 nights of no bedtime stories or morning pancakes. But it would also mean 7 uninterrupted days with her when she was there. No rushing to pack bags every few days, no constant transitions. What about school stuff? What if she has a project due on my week but it was assigned on your week? We communicate better. We use a shared calendar, text about homework, actually talk to each other about what's going on in her life instead of treating her like a package we're transferring. You're right. We should have been doing that all along. We were angry and hurt and doing the best we could with what we had. Rachel pushed off from the car. But we can do better now. We have to. Agreed. Rachel opened her car door, then paused. Maya's guitar recital is Friday night. Are you going? Of course. I've been helping her practice for weeks. Could I come too? Not to intrude on your custody time, but just to watch her perform? Jason felt something shift in his chest, the first real movement toward co-parenting instead of parallel parenting. She'd love that. It's at the community center at 7. I'll be there. Rachel climbed into her car, started the engine, then rolled down the window. Jason, thank you for not making me the villain. You could have. God knows you had reason to, but you didn't. You're Maya's mother. Whatever else we are to each other, that comes first. Yeah, it does. She drove away, and Jason stood in the school parking lot feeling like he'd survived a storm and emerged into unexpected sunshine. The custody battle was over. The fear that had haunted him for months was gone. Maya was still his daughter, still splitting time between both parents, still loved by both of them. He'd won. Except it didn't feel like winning. It felt like everyone had finally stopped losing. That evening, Jason picked Maya up from Rachel's house for his custody days. Rachel answered the door with Maya already packed and ready, bouncing with excitement to tell Jason about her day. And then Mrs. Patterson said I could be line leader tomorrow, and Tommy said his dog had puppies. And can we get a dog, Daddy? Please? We'll talk about it, Jason said, the universal parent response for maybe never. Rachel smiled at their familiar exchange. I put her soccer uniform in the bag. Practice is Wednesday at 6. Got it. I switched shifts so I can get her there by 5:45. You don't have to do that every time. I could take her some weeks. Really? Really? We're supposed to be a team, remember? Maya looked between them, her expression hopeful. Does this mean you're not mad at each other anymore? Jason and Rachel exchanged glances. We were never mad at each other, baby, Rachel said. We were just confused about what was best for you, but we figured it out. Good, because it was really sad when you were fighting. After Jason and Maya left, driving home through evening traffic with Maya chattering about puppies and line leader duties and the science project they'd be starting next week, Jason felt something he hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not happiness exactly, because there was still the ache of divorce, the reality of a family split between two homes, the knowledge that he'd never get back those early years when they'd all been together. But peace. The bone-deep relief of no longer living in fear. At home, they made spaghetti together, Maya's special request from before the final hearing. She stood on a step stool at the counter, carefully measuring pasta while Jason heated the sauce they'd made from scratch the previous week. Daddy? Yeah, baby? I was really scared today, at the courthouse. Jason's hand stilled on the wooden spoon. I know you were. That was very brave of you to speak up anyway. Grandma said I shouldn't go in, that it was for grown-ups. But I had to. I had to tell the judge that I wanted to stay with you. Do you know what that meant to me? Hearing you say that? Maya looked up at him with those serious 8-year-old eyes that sometimes seemed far older. Did it mean you knew I loved you? I already knew you loved me, but it meant you trusted me enough to tell the truth even though it was scary. That's the most important kind of love there is. The judge was nice. She didn't seem mad that I interrupted. Judge Martinez understood that sometimes kids need to be heard too. They ate dinner at their small table, Maya telling him about every detail of her day while Jason listened and asked questions and felt grateful for the ordinary miracle of his daughter's presence. After dinner, homework, math problems that Maya found easy, and a reading assignment about dolphins that she found fascinating. Then bath time, which somehow always resulted in water all over the bathroom floor. Then the ritual of brushing teeth, picking out tomorrow's clothes, finding the right stuffed animals for bed. 3 stories tonight? Maya asked hopefully, already tucked under her star-patterned comforter. 1.5. It's a school night. 2? 1 3/4. Final offer. Deal. Jason read from Maya's current favorite, a fantasy about a girl who could talk to trees, and by the middle of the 2nd story, Maya's eyes were drooping. Daddy? She murmured, half asleep. I'm glad I get to keep living here. Me too, baby. Me too. He stayed in the doorway after turning out the light, watching his daughter sleep in the room that was hers because he'd given up having his own room. Watching her breathe peacefully in the apartment that was small but filled with love. Watching the child who'd chosen him, who'd stood in a courtroom and said, I want to stay with Daddy. Later, lying on his pull-out couch, Jason pulled out his phone and opened his banking app. The check from Rachel would clear in a day or two. $5,000. More money than he'd had at one time since before the divorce. He opened a new note on his phone and started a list. What to do with the money. Pay rent 3 months ahead, security fix car transmission properly. No more temporary repairs. Buy Maya new winter coat. Not secondhand this time. Start college fund, even if it's just $500 to begin. Maybe therapy for me. Process everything that just happened. Save the rest for emergencies. It was practical, responsible, exactly what he should do with an unexpected windfall. But Jason also added one more line. Take Maya somewhere special. Make a memory. Because yes, financial security mattered, but so did the moments that made up a childhood, the adventures that became stories she'd tell her own children someday. The next few weeks fell into a new rhythm. Jason and Rachel worked out the details of their modified schedule, week on, week off, with both parents attending Maya's activities regardless of whose custody week it was. They created a shared calendar, started a group text where they coordinated school events and doctor appointments, and the million small details of raising a child. It wasn't seamless. There were still moments of tension, still disagreements about parenting choices, still the fundamental awkwardness of being divorced people who had to interact regularly. But it was better. So much better than the war they'd been waging. The first week Jason had Maya under the new schedule felt both longer and shorter than the old arrangement. Longer because 7 days stretched out with real routine and rhythm instead of quick snapshots. Shorter because time with Maya always passed too fast. They fell into patterns: Monday morning pancakes, Tuesday movie nights, Wednesday soccer practice, Thursday library visits, Friday guitar lessons, weekend adventures to free museums or parks, or anywhere Maya's curiosity led them. On Friday evening, Jason and Maya arrived at the community center for her guitar recital. The small auditorium was filling with families, proud parents with cameras ready, younger siblings fidgeting in their seats. Maya wore the dress Rachel had bought her, navy blue with white flowers appropriate for a recital. She clutched her guitar case nervously. "What if I mess up?" she whispered. "Then you keep playing. Music isn't about being perfect, remember? It's about expressing yourself." That's what Mr. Marcus says, too. Mr. Marcus is a smart guy. They found seats in the third row, and Maya went backstage with the other students to prepare. Jason sat alone, feeling the familiar isolation of single parenting at events designed for coupled families. Then Rachel slid into the seat beside him. "Sorry I'm late. Client meeting ran long." "You made it. That's what matters." Rachel looked around the auditorium, at the humble community center with its worn carpets and fluorescent lights. So different from the private recital halls where piano students in expensive lessons performed. "This is really where Maya has been learning guitar?" "Every Saturday for the past 6 months. She loves it." "I should have come before now." "You're here now." The lights dimmed. Maya was third in the lineup, performing a simple folk song that she'd been practicing for weeks. When she walked onto the stage with her guitar, looking tiny in the spotlight, both Jason and Rachel sat forward in their seats. Maya's fingers found the strings. The first few notes were tentative, uncertain. Then she found her rhythm, and the music flowed, not perfect, with a few missed notes and one brief hesitation, but genuine and heartfelt. Jason watched his daughter play. This child he'd fought so hard to keep. This little girl who'd stood in a courtroom and chosen him. Pride swelled in his chest so intensely it was almost painful. Beside him, Rachel was crying silently. When Maya finished, the applause was enthusiastic. She beamed, took a small bow, and hurried off stage. After the recital, they found Maya in the lobby, surrounded by other students and parents. When she saw both her parents together, her face lit up brighter than any spotlight. "Did you see me? Did I do okay?" "You were amazing," Jason said. "Absolutely beautiful," Rachel added, kneeling to Maya's level. "I'm so proud of you, baby." "Can we get ice cream now? Together? Both of you?" Jason looked at Rachel, who nodded. "Yeah, sweetheart. We can get ice cream together." They went to the ice cream shop 2 blocks away, the one with mismatched chairs and local art on the walls and mint chocolate chip that was Maya's favorite. They sat at a small table, Jason, Rachel, and Maya between them, and talked about the recital, about Maya's upcoming school project, about ordinary things that felt extraordinary because they were doing them together. Other customers glanced at them, probably assuming they were just another family out for ice cream, unaware of the courtrooms and lawyers and near miss of losing each other that had led to this moment. Maya chattered happily between bites of ice cream, her face smudged with chocolate, her eyes bright with joy at having both parents present and peaceful. "This is nice," she said. "I wish we could do this more." "Maybe we can," Rachel said, surprising both Jason and herself. "Maybe not every day, but sometimes, for special occasions." "Really? Really? Your dad and I are learning how to be a team again. A different kind of team than before, but still a team." Maya grinned, chocolate on her teeth. "The best team." Walking back to their cars, Maya held both their hands, swinging between them like she used to when she was smaller and the world was simpler. "Next week is Mommy's week," Maya said. "But you'll come to my soccer game on Wednesday, right, Daddy?" "Wouldn't miss it." "And Mommy, you'll take me to the library like Daddy and I usually do?" Rachel hesitated. The library had always been Jason's thing with Maya, but then nodded. "Absolutely. You can show me your favorite section. The one with the dragon books. At Rachel's car, they said their goodbyes. Maya hugged Jason fiercely. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Maya, so much. See you Wednesday? See you Wednesday. As Rachel's car pulled away, Maya waving from the back seat, Jason stood in the parking lot feeling the strange mixture of loss and gratitude that came with shared custody. Every goodbye carried the ache of separation, but every goodbye was followed by another hello. He drove home through familiar streets, past the courthouse where he'd nearly lost everything, past the coffee shop where Rachel had admitted her doubts, past all the landmarks of their long journey from married to divorce to something new and still being defined. His apartment looked the same as always when he walked in. Small, humble, filled with Maya's presence, even in her absence. Her drawings on the refrigerator, her shoes by the door, her books on the shelf, her laughter still echoing in the walls. This apartment that Rachel's lawyer had called inadequate, that expert witnesses had deemed insufficient, that a judge had weighed and measured and almost found wanting. But it was enough. It had always been enough. Because home wasn't about square footage or financial resources or material advantages. Home was where love lived, where showing up mattered more than showing off, where a father made pancakes and helped with homework and stayed awake during nightmares because that's what love looked like in action. Jason's phone buzzed, a text from Rachel. Thank you for letting me share tonight. It meant a lot. He typed back, thank you for being there. Maya was so happy. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, I'm going to do better. I'm going to be more present. I don't know exactly how yet, but I'm going to figure it out. I believe you. Jason? Yeah? You were right. In court, when you said love can't be measured in bank statements, you were right. You were right too. About resources mattering. Maya needs both. Your stability and my presence. That's why shared custody works. We really are a team, aren't we? Just a weird divorced version of one. The weirdest. But it's working. Yeah, it is. Jason set down his phone and looked around his quiet apartment. Tomorrow morning, there would be no Maya asking for pancakes, no school uniform to find, no backpack to pack. The loneliness of the week without her stretched ahead, 7 days that would feel empty despite his work and friends and his own life. But then there would be 7 days with her, 7 mornings and 7 nights, and 7 chances to be the father Maya had chosen, had fought for, had stood in a courtroom and defended. He pulled out his couch bed, changed into pajamas that had seen better days, and lay in the dark thinking about everything that had happened. The filing of the petition, the terror of representing himself, the testimony and cross-examinations, the fear that had consumed him for months. And then Maya, running down the courthouse aisle, choosing him, saying the words that had changed everything. I want to stay with Daddy. Jason had walked into family court alone, unprepared, outmatched by expensive lawyers and expert witnesses. He'd represented himself because he had no other choice, defended his parenting with nothing but love and presence and 3 years of showing up. Everyone had laughed when he said he'd represent himself. The courtroom had chuckled at his audacity, at his foolishness for thinking he could stand against professional legal representation. But when he'd spoken about his daughter, when he'd presented the evidence of ordinary love in action, when Maya herself had validated everything he'd said, no one was laughing anymore. They'd gasped instead. In surprise, in recognition, in understanding that sometimes the most powerful argument isn't the one delivered by expensive attorneys with impressive credentials. Sometimes it's just a father telling the truth about loving his daughter. Jason fell asleep in his too small apartment, in his too cramped pull-out bed, surrounded by evidence of a life that would never be wealthy or impressive by conventional standards. But it was his life, and it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The weeks following the withdrawn petition transformed into months, and those months began reshaping the landscape of their fractured family into something neither Jason nor Rachel had anticipated. Something better than what they'd lost, different from what they'd had, but whole in its own unexpected way. Jason deposited Rachel's check and did exactly what he'd planned. 3 months of rent paid ahead gave him breathing room he hadn't experienced since before the divorce. The car repair, done properly this time, not the Band-Aid fixes he'd been limping along with, meant he could drive Maya to soccer practice without praying the transmission would hold. The college fund he started with $500 felt laughably small, but it was a beginning, a promise to Maya's future that said her father was thinking beyond just surviving day to day. And he did take Maya somewhere special. On a Saturday in early November, during his custody week, Jason woke Maya before dawn. She stumbled out of her bedroom rubbing her eyes, confused about why her father was dressed and packing a cooler at 5 in the morning. "Where are we going?" "It's a surprise. Dress warm." They drove 2 hours north to the coast, arriving just as the sun began painting the horizon in shades of orange and gold. The beach was nearly empty, just a few early joggers and one old man walking a dog. The air smelled of salt and possibility. Maya's face transformed when she saw the ocean stretching endlessly before them. The beach? In November? The best time to visit. No crowds, and the waves are bigger. They spent the day building elaborate sandcastles, collecting shells in an old coffee tin, running from waves that chased them up the shore. Jason taught Maya to identify different types of seabirds, showed her how to spot sand crabs, let her wade into the cold water until her lips turned blue, and he wrapped her in a towel that smelled of their apartment's detergent. For lunch, they ate sandwiches Jason had made that morning, sitting on a weathered piece of driftwood while seagulls circled hopefully overhead. "This is better than any fancy restaurant," Maya declared, her hair wild with salt and wind, her cheeks pink from cold and happiness. "Sometimes the simple things are the best things." "Is that why you didn't buy a bigger apartment with Mommy's money?" Jason smiled at his daughter's perceptiveness. "Partly, but mostly because our apartment is our home. Making it bigger wouldn't make it more ours." "I'm glad. I like our apartment. It's cozy." Cozy is a good word for it. They stayed until sunset, watching the sky turn purple and pink, the temperature dropping as darkness approached. On the drive home, Maya fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted and sandy and completely content. Jason glanced at her in the rearview mirror, this child who'd saved him in a courtroom, who'd chosen him when the world suggested she shouldn't, who found joy in secondhand clothes and sandwiches on driftwood, and apartments that were too small but filled with love. He'd taken her to the beach with money Rachel had given him to make amends for a court battle that never should have happened. Somehow that felt right, transforming conflict into memory, turning pain into a day his daughter would remember forever. The new custody schedule settled into comfortable routine over the following months. Week on, week off meant longer stretches without Maya, but it also meant deeper presence when she was there. No more rushing through evenings, no more quick handoffs that barely allowed for conversation. Instead, Jason got full weeks to be her father, morning routines that felt established, evening rituals that had space to breathe, weekends that could include spontaneous adventures without worrying about disrupting the schedule. The weeks without Maya were harder than Jason had anticipated. The apartment felt cavernous in her absence, every corner echoing with the ghost of her presence. He'd come home from work to silence, make dinner for one, watch television without her commentary about why the characters were making bad decisions, or whether dragons could really breathe fire, or if he thought their neighbor's cat was lonely. But he learned to use that time productively. He enrolled in an online business management course, thinking about the possibility of promotion at work. He started exercising regularly, running in the mornings before his shift. He reconnected with friends he'd neglected during the custody battle, discovering he had a life beyond fatherhood that had been dormant but not dead. And he went to therapy. The first session was awkward. Jason had never been someone who talked about feelings with strangers, had always believed that dealing with problems meant working harder, not talking more. But his therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, had a way of asking questions that didn't feel intrusive, of listening that didn't feel like judgment. "Tell me about the custody battle," she said in their second session. "We won, or rather, my ex-wife withdrew her petition, so it's over." "Is it?" Jason had bristled at the question. "Yes. We have a new schedule, we're co-parenting better, everything's fine." "And how do you feel about everything that happened?" That's when Jason realized he hadn't processed any of it. He'd been so focused on surviving, on getting through each day and each hearing and each moment of terror that he'd lose Maya, that he'd never actually dealt with the emotional aftermath. So he talked about the fear that had consumed him for months, about the inadequacy he'd felt standing alone in court while Rachel had professional representation, about the anger at a system that seemed to value money over presence, about the guilt that maybe Rachel had been right, that maybe Maya did deserve better than a one-bedroom apartment and a father who worked irregular hours. "Do you still believe that?" Dr. Chen asked. "That Maya deserves better than you?" Jason thought about it. "No, not better. Just that she deserves everything, and I can't give her everything." "Can any parent give their child everything?" "Rachel can give her more. More things. Can she give her more love, more presence, more of herself?" That's when Jason understood. He'd been measuring himself against an impossible standard, comparing his limitations to someone else's strengths while ignoring his own value. Rachel could provide material advantages, yes, but Jason provided daily love in action. Both mattered. Neither was more important than the other. Maya needed both of them, exactly as they were. Meanwhile, Rachel was undergoing her own transformation. She'd returned to work after the withdrawn petition with a new clarity about her priorities. When her boss offered her a promotion that would require twice the travel, she declined. The first time in her career she'd turned down advancement. "I need to be more present for my daughter," she told him, expecting disappointment. Instead, he'd nodded understanding. "Family comes first. There'll be other opportunities." She rearranged her schedule to attend Maya's soccer games, even the ones that fell during Jason's custody weeks. She started a tradition of Friday pizza nights on her weeks, where she actually cooked instead of ordering takeout, where she sat with Maya and asked about her day and really listened to the answers. She also started therapy, working through her own guilt about the custody battle, about the months she'd spent convinced that providing financially was enough, about the moment in court when Maya had chosen Jason, and Rachel had realized how absent she'd been. "I convinced myself I was doing it for Maya," she told her therapist, "fighting for primary custody, trying to give her a better home. But really, I think I was trying to prove something to myself, that I was a good mother despite working so much, that I could still be her primary parent even though Jason was the one showing up every day. And what do you believe now? That being a good mother isn't about being primary. It's about being present. And I'm learning how to do that." On a Wednesday evening in January, both Jason and Rachel showed up to Maya's soccer game. It was Rachel's custody week, but Jason had started attending games regardless of the schedule, and Rachel never objected. They sat together on the cold metal bleachers, watching their daughter play midfielder with enthusiastic, if not particularly skilled, determination. "She's gotten better," Jason observed as Maya stole the ball from an opponent and kicked it toward her teammate. "The coach says she has good instincts. Not the fastest or most coordinated, but she reads the game well. She gets that from you. Strategic thinking." Rachel glanced at him, surprised. "You think so?" "Absolutely. I'm the pancake maker. You're the problem solver." They fell into companionable silence, cheering when Maya's team scored, groaning when the other team countered, living the ordinary experience of being parents at their child's sporting event. After the game, Maya ran to them both, sweaty and grass-stained and grinning. "Did you see my assist? I passed to Emma and she scored." "We saw," Rachel said. "That was excellent teamwork." "Can we get burgers? I'm starving." Jason and Rachel exchanged glances. These moments still required negotiation, the unspoken question of whether co-parenting extended to shared meals or if boundaries should be maintained. "Sure," Rachel said. "My treat." At the burger restaurant, they sat in a booth, Maya between her parents, ketchup on her chin, talking non-stop about the game and her teammates and the science fair project she was planning about whether plants could hear music. Other diners probably assumed they were just another family, together and whole. They couldn't see the divorce papers filed 3 years ago, the custody battle that had nearly torn them apart, the courtroom where everything had almost been lost. And maybe that was okay. Maybe this version of family, imperfect, unconventional, built from the wreckage of what had been, was just as valid as the traditional model. "Mom, can I sleep at Dad's apartment tonight?" Maya asked suddenly. "I left my science textbook there and I need it for homework tomorrow." Rachel hesitated. It was her custody week, and the schedule mattered for establishing routine. But Jason caught her eye and gave a small nod that said, "It's okay. We can be flexible." "Sure, baby," Rachel said. "I'll pick you up tomorrow morning before school." "Can you both take me to school? Like, after the court thing?" Jason and Rachel looked at each other, both remembering that morning when they'd driven Maya to school together, both of them raw from the courtroom, trying to figure out how to move forward. "That was a special circumstance, sweetheart," Rachel said carefully. "But it was nice, having both of you. Can't we do it again?" The question hung in the air, exposing the complicated reality of their situation. They were doing better, yes, co-parenting more effectively, communicating with less friction, even occasionally sharing meals. But there were still boundaries, still the reality that they were divorced for reasons that remained valid, still the need to maintain separate lives. "Tell you what," Jason said, "maybe we can do special drop-offs for big events, like the first day of school or your birthday or science fair day." Maya considered this compromise. "Okay, that's fair." Later that night at Jason's apartment, Maya brushed her teeth and changed into the pajamas she kept in both homes. Jason read her 2 stories instead of the usual 1.5, unable to resist her pleading eyes. "Dad?" Maya said, her voice sleepy as Jason reached for the light switch. "Yeah, baby? Are you and Mom going to get back together?" The question hit Jason like a physical blow. He sat back down on the edge of Maya's bed, trying to formulate an answer that was honest without crushing hope. "No, sweetheart, we're not. But you're friends now. You eat burgers together and come to my games together. Friends who like each other get married, right? It's more complicated than that. Your mom and I tried being married, and it didn't work out. We made each other sad more than happy. But you're not sad now. That's because we're not trying to be married anymore. We're being your parents, which we're much better at when we're not married to each other." Maya absorbed this, her young mind working through logic that even adults struggled to understand. "So you can be a good team without being married?" "Exactly. We're a parenting team, a family team, just not a married team." "Okay," Maya yawned. "I'm glad you're not sad anymore." "Me too, baby. Me too." After Maya fell asleep, Jason sat on his couch and thought about her question. It wasn't the first time someone had suggested reconciliation. His sister Angela had hinted at it. His coworker Darius had asked outright if they were getting back together. Even Rachel's mother Patricia had mentioned that they seemed happier together now than they had during the marriage. But happiness in small doses wasn't the same as happiness in daily life. Jason and Rachel could manage soccer games and school drop-offs and occasional burgers because they weren't navigating the 1,000 small conflicts that had eroded their marriage. Different approaches to money, different communication styles, different visions for their future. They were better as co-parents than they'd ever been as spouses. And that was okay. That was enough. Spring arrived with its promise of renewal, and with it came Maya's 9th birthday. Jason and Rachel had agreed to throw a joint party, the first time they'd hosted something together since the divorce. Maya had been ecstatic at the idea, already planning a guest list that included her entire class plus neighbors plus cousins. "We'll do it at my house," Rachel had offered. "There's more space for that many kids." Jason had felt the old inadequacy rise. Of course they'd use Rachel's house. Of course his apartment wasn't big enough. But then Rachel had added, "But you're in charge of the cake. Maya says nobody makes birthday cake like you do." The party fell on a Saturday in April. Jason arrived at Rachel's house early with Maya, carrying the 3-layer chocolate cake he'd spent the previous evening making, Maya's favorite, with chocolate frosting and rainbow sprinkles that spelled out her name. Rachel's house looked different than Jason remembered. Less showroom perfect, more lived in. Maya's artwork covered the refrigerator. A guitar stand had appeared in the living room corner, showing Rachel had bought Maya her own instrument to keep at this house. Photos of Maya at various ages lined the mantel, and Jason was surprised to see several that included him. Family photos from before the divorce that Rachel had apparently chosen to keep displayed. "The cake looks amazing," Rachel said, clearing space on the kitchen counter. 3 layers might have been ambitious. "It's perfect." They worked together to set up the backyard, Rachel stringing lights while Jason assembled tables and chairs rented for the occasion. They moved around each other with the easy familiarity of people who'd once shared a life, but without the friction that had made that life unsustainable. "Balloons go by the fence or the gate?" Jason asked. "Gate. more visible when guests arrive. Got it! Maya's party was chaotic and joyful. 23 nine-year-olds playing games, eating pizza, screaming with laughter as they ran through the sprinklers Rachel had set up. Parents dropped off their kids with grateful expressions, clearly relieved for 2 hours of freedom. Jason and Rachel managed the chaos together, breaking up minor disputes, refilling juice boxes, organizing relay races and treasure hunts. They fell into their old rhythm without thinking about it, the teamwork that had once made them good partners, even when they weren't good spouses. When it came time for cake, Jason carried out his creation to enthusiastic cheering. Maya's face glowed in the light of 9 candles, surrounded by friends and the 2 parents who loved her more than anything in the world. "Make a wish," several kids shouted. Maya closed her eyes, was quiet for a moment, then blew out all the candles in one breath. Everyone applauded. Later, Jason found himself wondering what she'd wished for. Probably something innocent, a puppy, flying powers, unlimited ice cream. But maybe she'd wished for her parents to get back together, for the family to be whole again in the way it had once been. If so, Jason hoped she'd learned that families could be whole in different ways, that love didn't require traditional structures, that the best version of her parents was this version, separate but cooperative, divorced but devoted. As the party wound down and parents collected their sugar-high children, Jason started cleaning up while Rachel handled goodbyes. They worked in comfortable silence, filling trash bags with paper plates and deflated balloons, wiping down tables, restoring order to the cheerful chaos. Maya had gone inside with her grandmother Patricia to sort through presents, her voice carrying through the open door as she exclaimed over each gift with equal enthusiasm. "Today was good," Rachel said, tying off a trash bag. "Really good. Maya was so happy. I couldn't have done it without you." "Same. This kind of party would have killed me solo." Rachel smiled. "Remember Maya's 3rd birthday, when we tried to do a petting zoo and that goat ate half the decorations? And then threw up on your mother's shoes?" They both laughed at the memory, one of many they shared, remnants of a life that had been difficult but not devoid of joy. "We were good at some things," Rachel said quietly. "As a couple, I mean." "We were. Just not at being married." "No, not at that." Rachel gathered empty juice boxes into a recycling bag. "I'm glad we figured out how to be good at this, though. Co-parenting, being Maya's team." "Me too." "Jason," Rachel's voice was tentative, "I never properly apologized. For the custody petition, for putting you through that, for almost taking away time with Maya because I couldn't see past my own guilt about working so much." "Rachel, no, let me finish. I was wrong. About almost everything. You're an incredible father, and Maya is lucky to have you as present as you are. I'm sorry it took me so long to see that." Jason felt his throat tighten. "I'm sorry too. For the things I said in court, for making it seem like working and providing wasn't valuable, for turning it into a competition instead of recognizing that we were both doing our best." They stood in Rachel's backyard as the sun began to set. 2 people who'd loved each other once and failed at it, but who'd found something more sustainable in the wreckage: respect, cooperation, shared purpose. "We make a good team," Rachel said. "The best kind. The Maya kind." Through the window, they could see Maya showing Patricia a new board game, her hands animated as she explained the rules, her face still glowing from the best birthday she'd ever had. The following months continued the pattern of gradual healing and adjustment. Jason got his promotion at work, supervisor to assistant manager, with a salary increase that meant he could finally breathe financially without constant anxiety. He started looking at 2-bedroom apartments, thinking Maya should have her own room without him having to sacrifice his couch. But when he mentioned it to Maya, she'd surprised him. "But I like our apartment. It's home." "You could have more space. Your own room with a door that closes." "I already have my own room, and I like that we're close. I like hearing you in the next room when I fall asleep." So Jason stayed in their small apartment, but he upgraded a few things. A better couch that was more comfortable to sleep on, new curtains Maya picked out, a bookshelf for her growing library collection. He continued to build the college fund, depositing a little each month, watching it grow with pride, even though it would be years before Maya needed it. Rachel also made changes. She'd been offered another promotion, this one local, no extra travel required. She accepted, her career advancing in a way that didn't require sacrifice of her presence. She also started dating, a colleague from another division, someone kind and stable who understood that Maya came first. When Rachel mentioned she was seeing someone, Jason had felt an unexpected pang. Not jealousy exactly, but something adjacent to it, a ghost of what they'd once meant to each other. "That's good," he'd said, meaning it. "You deserve happiness." "So do you. Are you seeing anyone?" "No time, between work and Maya and trying to have something resembling a life." "You should. You're a catch, Jason Hale. A catch living on a pull-out couch in a one-bedroom apartment. A catch who makes birthday cakes from scratch and shows up for every school event and loves his daughter enough to represent himself in court." Rachel smiled. "The right person will see that." Maybe someday Jason would believe it enough to try. For now he was content with the life he had. Imperfect? Yes, but his. Genuinely, completely his. In June, Maya's school held its annual science fair. She'd been working on her plant music project for months, carefully documenting which plants grew taller when exposed to classical music versus rock versus silence. Her hypothesis that plants preferred classical music had been proven wrong when the rock music plants grew tallest, which had delighted her immensely. Both Jason and Rachel attended the science fair, walking through the gymnasium filled with poster boards and young scientists explaining their projects with varying degrees of confidence. Maya's presentation was enthusiastic, if not entirely scientific. "So basically, plants like loud music. Maybe because it's more fun. I don't know, but look how tall this one got." The judges, teachers and parent volunteers, asked questions Maya answered with cheerful speculation. When they moved on, Maya turned to her parents with anxious eyes. "Do you think I'll win?" "I think you did great," Jason said. "But winning isn't the point," Rachel added. "Learning is the point. Did you learn something?" "I learned that my hypothesis can be wrong, and that's okay, because science is about testing ideas, not about being right all the time." "That's exactly right." Maya didn't win the science fair. That honor went to a sixth grader who'd built a working solar oven. But she received an honorable mention for her enthusiastic presentation style, which she accepted with a bow that made everyone laugh. Afterward, the three of them went out for ice cream, their tradition for celebrating things big and small. They sat at their usual table by the window, Maya between her parents, chocolate chip on her nose as she discussed her plans for next year's science fair. "I'm thinking something with rocks, or maybe volcanoes. Do you think I could build a volcano?" "Absolutely," Jason said. "We'll figure it out." "We'll need to start earlier, though," Rachel said. "Give you more time to document everything properly. You'll both help?" Jason and Rachel exchanged glances, the unspoken question of whether they'd still be maintaining this level of cooperation next year, whether the truce they'd built would last, or whether old conflicts would resurface and divide them again. But looking at Maya's hopeful face, her trust that her parents would be there for her volcano project, and everything else that mattered, Jason felt certain. "We'll both help," he said. "Promise?" "Promise." That night, after dropping Maya at Rachel's house for her custody week, Jason drove home through the familiar streets of his neighborhood. He passed the courthouse where he'd fought for his daughter, past the coffee shop where Rachel had admitted her doubts, past all the landmarks of their journey from combat to cooperation. His apartment building looked shabby in the summer twilight, the paint peeling more than he remembered, the parking lot's cracks more prominent. But lights glowed in windows where neighbors lived their own complicated lives. And somewhere inside was his small space with Maya's drawings on the refrigerator and her guitar in the corner and her books on the shelf. Jason climbed the stairs to his third-floor apartment, unlocked the door, and stepped into the quiet that still felt too loud after years of Maya's constant chatter. But it was a peaceful quiet now, not a lonely one. Because Maya would be back in 4 days, and in the meantime, Jason had a life that was his own. Work he was good at, friends he was reconnecting with, a therapist who helped him process everything he'd been through. He'd survived the worst fear of his life, losing his daughter to a custody battle he seemed destined to lose. He'd stood alone in a courtroom while people laughed at his audacity, faced an expensive lawyer with nothing but truth and love, represented himself when everyone said he'd fail. And then Maya had run down that courthouse aisle and chosen him. "I want to stay with Daddy." Those 5 words had changed everything. Not because they won him the custody battle, Rachel had withdrawn before a ruling came, but because they validated everything Jason had sacrificed, every shift traded and every dinner made and every bedtime story read when he was exhausted beyond measure. Being present had mattered, showing up had counted. Love in action had been enough. Jason pulled out his phone and scrolled to the photo he'd taken at Maya's birthday party. Maya between her parents, her face radiant with joy, both adults smiling at the camera in a moment of genuine peace. They looked like a family. Not the traditional kind, not the kind that lived together or shared a last name on a mailbox or filed joint tax returns, but a family nonetheless, bound by love for a child, by commitment to co-parenting, by the hard-won understanding that sometimes the best version of a relationship is one that's been reimagined entirely. Jason set down his phone and looked around his small apartment. Tomorrow he'd go to work. Next week he'd pick up Maya for his custody time. Next month there would be soccer games and guitar recitals, and ordinary moments that added up to an extraordinary life. He'd come so close to losing it all, so terrifyingly close. But in the end, love had been enough. Presence had mattered. Showing up every day, making pancakes and helping with homework and being there for nightmares, all of it had added up to something that couldn't be measured in income brackets or square footage, but was valuable beyond measure nonetheless. Jason Hale had represented himself in family court because he had no other choice. He'd stood alone against professionals and experts and a system that seemed designed to favor financial resources over daily devotion. Everyone had laughed when he said he'd do it alone. But when he'd spoken about his daughter with nothing but truth and love, when Maya herself had validated everything he'd said by choosing him, when Rachel had realized that winning in court would mean losing what actually mattered, nobody was laughing anymore. They'd gasped instead, in recognition of something they'd almost lost sight of in the combat of custody battles and legal strategy and expert testimony. That being a parent wasn't about having more, it was about giving more of yourself. Jason stood at his apartment window, watching his neighborhood settle into night. Somewhere 4 miles away, Maya was probably already asleep in her room at Rachel's house, dreaming about volcano projects and soccer goals and whatever else filled the mind of a 9-year-old who knew she was loved by both her parents. In 4 days, she'd be back to chocolate chip pancakes and homework help and bedtime stories, back to their small apartment that was big enough for all the love they'd built inside it. Jason smiled at his reflection in the window, a man who'd fought the hardest battle of his life and won, not through legal expertise or financial resources, but through the simple, stubborn commitment to showing up. He'd represented himself because he had to. He'd won because he loved. And in this small apartment, on this ordinary evening, in a life that would never be impressive by conventional standards, Jason Hale had everything that mattered. He had his daughter. He had his purpose. He had proof that presence was power, that showing up was success, that love, when backed by action, day after day after day, was the most compelling argument of all. The courtroom had gasped in recognition of that truth, and Jason Hale would spend the rest of his life living it.